1 second. Guys, sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. All right, we're live. We're live now. All right, greetings, everyone. We are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Who. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry about the delay. I had to, I'm on daddy duty, so I had to fix Mansa, his dinner. That kind of went over. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining once again. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you go to dynastymirror.com. Again, go to dynastymirror.com. While you're there, make sure you get all your merchandise, get all your books. Also, subscribe to the email list so you guys can stay up to date in regards to what's going on with Dynasty Mirror, the brand. Patreon, become a monthly Patreon, patreon.com, search for Uhuru, patreon.com/search for Uhuru, become a monthly Patreon. We really appreciate your guys' support. And then tour Sierra Leone, April 21st to the 30th. Again, April 21st to the 30th, we are going to Sierra Leone. You guys come and join us. If you want to send me a message, if you're interested in coming joining us, send me a message. Go to searchforwhoer.com or dynastymirror.com. Send me a message and leave your phone number. I'll call you and we'll get you guys up and running. Without further ado, we have a special guest, a favorite here on Search for Uhuru, Brother Ebube Okoli. And today's topic is capitalism the way forward in Africa. I know yesterday we were having a conversation. And I'm sure Lou Major or Brandon will call in regards to how we should operate. And Ebube is definitely, when it comes to economics and business and politics, Ebube is definitely the expert. So Ebube, if you could introduce yourself, shout out your page. People, please go subscribe, and we'll go from there.
All right. Now, my name is Ebube Okoli, for those who don't know me. For those who do, it's good to see you again. It's glad to have you here in this space. For those who don't know me, I'm a Nigerian-born, American-trained attorney and geopolitical analyst. I'm also the host of Up Close and Center. Now, Up Close and Center is a channel here on YouTube. So 2 things. Make sure you hit the like button here and go ahead and click that, and make sure that you subscribe to Up Close and Center for geopolitical analysis centering and focusing on the African continent, coming from the perspective of the African, so you don't have the bias that you get at some of the larger media houses. So once again, make sure you subscribe to Up Close and Center. You know when you're there because the logo is black and the lettering is white. So go ahead and subscribe to that and click on the like button here. Now, before we get started, first things first, shout outs to Lou Mage and Brandon. I watched what they had to say yesterday. Very intelligent set of brothers. I don't agree with everything that they say, but it's always a pleasure listening to both of them because they come with very refreshing perspectives that you don't often hear. So they're very thought-provoking brothers, and it would be nice if they are watching for either of them to chime in if they deem so or see it fit to do so.
Yes, sir. So Brandon and Lou Major, in about 30 minutes, we'll open up the line so people can call in. So Brandon, Lou Major, if you guys are watching, in fact, I'll go ahead and send you guys a link if you guys want to call in about 30 minutes and, give your opinion. You're more than welcome to. Capitalism. So sometimes in this space, especially my space, the Pan-African space, Ebube, capitalism is a cuss word almost. It's a cuss word, Capitalism originated from slavery. That's what people say. So capitalism, should it be a cuss word or should it be something we embrace as African?
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to capitalism, within the system that we currently live in, things are weaponized against certain groups. Now, we know the group that is most likely targeted by the system 99% of the time. And so capitalism was actually weaponized against certain groups here in this country. So when they hear capitalism, they think, no, thank you, because it's just one of the many things that have been weaponized against a certain segment of the population. It's almost like a German Shepherd. German Shepherds, to an extent, have been weaponized against certain groups. So certain people may feel certain things about German Shepherds. But capitalism in and of itself isn't a dirty word. It's not a bad thing. It merely just capitalism, and we have to be clear, there's no economic system ran by any current government on this planet that's purely capitalist. Most societies have a mix of socialism and capitalism. So, for example, Social Security, socialism, Medicare, socialism. The fact that whenever you live in a county or a city or things of that nature, they take a little bit of your money out to provide free public education, because a society will socialize what it sees as a necessity. Now, sometimes what it sees as a necessity is dictated by corporations who may want to take over that piece of industry. And so they'll fight to say, no, this needs to stay in private hands. But most nations are a mix of socialism and capitalism. And all capitalism is a system where private citizens own the means of production. And that's just a fancy way of saying that basically they own the businesses, the industries, as opposed to the government owning the largest businesses and industries and regulating those. Now, the reason Africans need to be capitalist is because you have to understand the world market. The world market, and I believe I've said this before, but I'll briefly explain. The world market, it's like a giant science fair, and every nation has an empty table. And what is on your table is what you bring to the world market.
Right.
Meaning that a country in Africa, they may bring something that they dug out of the ground. And if you think about it, okay, they needed low-paid guys with shovels to dig this out of the ground or get it out of the ground, a few trucks to transport it to a port in order to ship it off to another country that's now going to take that raw material for pennies on the dollar from you. And then they're going to process it. And it's through the processing that they generate wealth. So wealth is generated through the processing, and that's what makes these nations wealthy. It's almost as if, let's say you had a machine that could take $1 bills and turn them into $20 bills. You have a process to turn a $1 bill into a $20 bill. Now, the person who owns that machine or controls that process is going to be very wealthy. All they need is $5 in order to have $100. So that's essentially what is meant by processing. They take the raw material, which they bought from typically an African nation, and they now move that away to their nation, and they develop it, and they create jobs. And so many things come off the developing process that maintain the economy, that add wealth, that add value. And by the time they're done adding value to those same products, you can't even sell those back to the African nations of origins because they're simply unaffordable to most people in those countries. So now what we're missing in Africa, and you have to remember that there's a difference between what makes a nation rich and what makes a nation poor. Poor nations are poor because they either can't create systems to process the raw materials before they leave their shore, or they're put in a certain position where they try to turn themselves into manufacturers or go to that next level. There's pressure from outside in order to prevent them, because some nations know that if African nations truly industrialize, you've essentially cut out the middleman. If African nations truly industrialize, the middleman loses out. And oftentimes many nations that are developed, the developed nations act as the middleman for most of the natural resources that leave the continent.
Right.
So now there's a big gap where there's no processing. It's just raw materials leaving the shores of Africa. Now, you remember the definition of capitalism is owning and controlling the means of production. So now what we need to inculcate as Africans is we need to embrace capitalism and say, wait a minute. Now, before these raw materials leave our shores, before these raw materials go to another nation to turn this cocoa into Hershey's bars and sell them back to us.
Right.
Before it leaves our shores, why don't we do that? Why don't we set up something locally here that will source the local materials? And because we have 1.3 billion people and growing at a very fast rate, by the end of this century, Nigeria in particular is going to have a population of just under 800 million people in the next 80 years. That's huge. That's a large market. So anybody that's selling candy bars to just Nigeria alone, not speaking of West Africa,
right,
just Nigeria alone. And so, for example, the end of this century, the Niger Republic is going to have 200 million people. 200 million people. So between which is Nigeria's current population. So between Nigeria and Niger alone, not even the remaining West African nations, you're going to have a population of 1 billion people. That's about, That's over 3 times the size of the United States just in between those two nations. So anyone now who gets in there and fills the gap of processing those raw materials and then selling them within the country without having to leave the shores of the country, you can do it you can do it very cost effectively. And so the billionaires that are coming up in this next generation are going to be people that say, let me step in, let me be a capitalist and control the means of production. There's a giant gap here. People often complain of the Lebanese and the Indians and the Chinese and things like that, but they've just realized the secret a long time ago. There's a large gap when it comes to the industrialization aspect in Africa, and they're trying to take advantage of that. And that's why I personally believe that every African American that has the means should take advantage of that, because at the end of the day, it builds a stronger connection back to the continent. And it would just be great for the continent as well to have that industrialization taking place from a familiar face, as opposed to someone who came from another continent, and you can't necessarily trust their motives in regards to how they operate.
Absolutely. Guys, hit that like button. Again, as you come into the chat room, please hit the like button. And again, as you come into the chat room, please hit the like button. Now, is there a difference between free market and capitalism, or is it intertwined? Is it the same? Because I hear people say, I believe in a free market, instead of saying they're a capitalist.
Well, the capitalism depends on the free market.
Okay.
Right now, rather than the government saying, Dynast, you're going to be in charge of the textile industry. We need this many textiles. And now you get to work making the quota that the government just gave you. Right. So regardless of what the people want or need, I'm essentially saying we need 10,000. We need 10,000 of this, 50,000 of that, 60,000 of that. Right. And let's say that the thing you made 10,000 of, the demand is actually 1.7 million. So now the demand is greater. And that was part of the problem with those command economies, where the government told certain sectors, certain industries, here's what you're going to produce. Here's what you're going to do. And now it created shortages because they forecasted wrong. So the free market is essentially saying, if people prefer blue shirts as opposed to wanting red shirts, if we don't produce any red shirts because nobody wants to buy them, then that's okay. It's a free market. You know how they used to say, it's a free country, do what you want to do. It's a free market. So now if nobody wants to buy red shirts, we're not going to produce red shirts. We're going to produce blue shirts, because this is what the market tells us that they want. It's almost like a restaurant. If you have a buffet and you find every single day nobody eats the green beans, you now might want to switch out the green beans for maybe mashed potatoes or something else, because the people have shown you that they don't want it. So the people are in charge of telling the producers what to produce, as opposed to a command economy where the government is responsible for telling the producers what to produce.
Let's see here. The deck is stacked against us. Why not change the game? Time is now. What do you mean by that? It's just, again, people are so anti-capitalism, but it seems as if you study history, it seems as if in Africa, we've been practicing some type of form of capitalism before the onset of Europeans. Am I right, or am I wrong? Or
yeah, we've been practicing capitalism since the dawn of time. You look at every ancient African culture, they had a currency exchange system, and even now we practice extreme capitalism, meaning that any business you want to really set up, you set it up. If you, in Africa, you only set up a business that you know will succeed. Right? There's no government saying you need to put more mama puts here, or you need to put more suya stands here. No, if you realize that the aboki is a mile that way and the other aboki is a mile that way, you may want to say, you know what, let me go ahead and fund a suya stand here, because this is going to meet the demand of the area. So we've always had capitalism, but you have to remember that certain segments of the population within this country, capitalism was weaponized against them.
Right.
And they were locked out of this system. And the wealth that they helped generate, which was the wealth of the nation and the basis of the nation's strength economically, they were frozen out of. So when they hear capitalism, it sounds like a dirty word. So sometimes Pan-Africanists talk more about socialism, but socialism is good, but it goes hand in hand with capitalism. Having a truly socialist economy or economic system would be just as much of a failure as having a purely capitalistic economic system. Really, you want a good mix of the two. So, for example, things that we all agree that we need, like, for example, basic education. We believe that everyone should be able to read and do basic arithmetic. So now if that's the case, everybody doesn't mind if 5 cents are taken out of every check of every citizen every time they get paid in order to maintain a public school system. That's pure socialism, but people really wouldn't pick it against that. Because in some nations where it's pure capitalism, if you don't have money to go to school and your school fees can't be paid,
right,
you just need to take up a trade as a welder or something of that nature where there isn't much reading involved. So socialism to an extent is good. Capitalism to an extent is good. But what you need is you need a good mix of the two of them.
Ebube, so we've been having this conversation or debate in regards to, as African Americans relocate to Africa and open up businesses, like in Nigeria, the minimum wage is like what, $100 a month, $120 a month of even that.
30,000 roughly.
Yeah, so 30,000 naira, that's about what, $90?
Like $89, $92, something.
Right,
just
right.
under $100.
So the argument is us as Black Americans relocating to Africa, paying an African minimum wage or whatever the normal rate is in, we'll say, Nigeria for specific product and service, we would be exploiting them. What are your thoughts on that in regards to cheap labor in a place like Nigeria?
Well, when we say cheap labor, now cheap labor might not be bad because the word cheap, for example, it's relative.
Right.
If someone's selling mangoes for $1 and this person's selling mangoes for 10 cents, these mangoes are cheaper than the other mangoes. Now, there may be a reason why, there might not be a reason why. This person might just be selling them at that rate. So now someone who's used to paying minimum wage in America, you can pay a laborer, a day laborer, $100, $200 a day, depending on what they're doing.
Right.
Now, when you go to other countries and you look at it's about a living wage, meaning that if someone can make $300 a month in Nigeria, which is what's that? Just under 100K? No.
A little over 100K.
About
100K. Because I mean the hour gets weaker. It's about 100K.
100K. That's it's not a great salary, but that's a salary that you could feed your family. If you're making 100K and maybe you live not in one of the more expensive cities like Lagos, Abuja, Harcourt, maybe if you lived in Oshobo, for example, maybe in the village, 100K is okay. You live at your level.
Because what people have to understand, in like Oshobo, you can get a decent like 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment for like $900 for the year.
For the whole year. Yeah.
For the whole year.
For the entire year. Yeah.
The whole year.
And if you make a deal with the landlord and you say, you know what, I'm going to give you 2 years up front and we're going to take 30% of that off, you could get that. Essentially, you'd be paying $70 a month. So to now say, is it exploitative to pay someone $300 a month when their rent is $70 a month? The answer is no, because that's a living wage. Now, if you brought somebody to America and you paid them $300 a month, and people normally get paid biweekly,
right? If
their check was $150 every 2 weeks, that would be cruel and unusual.
Right.
So it's not about the amount that you're paying. It's, can this person live off of what's being paid to the person? So it's about a living wage, not necessarily the number. It's about the effectiveness of the amount that's being paid to the person.
Okay. I'm glad you cleared that up, because I know a lot of people will say, well, we're going over, we're exploiting them, but again, you have to put it in, it's all relative. You have to put it in perspective that in Oshobo, you can get a decent 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment for $900 for the year.
You can get a good meal for $1 in Nigeria.
Right.
You can get a good meal for $1, like a solid meal. It's all organic. Everything is like for $1, you can get a really good meal in Nigeria in certain places. 360 naira can get you a meal at a Mama Puts or places alongside the road. You can get a nice meal for $1. Here, you're looking at the dollar menu, and it's all unhealthy food.
Right. Exactly. Guys, again, hit that like button. We have almost 200 people watching. I sent the link out to some people. Go ahead and call in and ask your question. Again, go ahead and call in and ask your question. And, we're going to go ahead and continue the conversation. Let's see here. Listening from Ghana, great wealth building education. Shout out to Akon Triumphs, man. Thank you so much for the super chat, brother. Thank you so much for the pounds, brother. Really appreciate it. Let me go ahead and put that on there.
Shout outs to Ghana. Beautiful country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, as far as the SARS situation, a little bit off topic in Nigeria, I'm just really interested because you have the scoop, Ebube. You have the scoop, How's that going to affect the election in 2023?
Now, you remember, Dynasty, 2 broadcasts ago when we spoke, someone asked me what I thought about the 2023 election. Right. I told him that's 3 years away. And in Nigeria, in the Nigerian political scene, 3 years can be 20. So now you look at it currently. This is a different political landscape, completely different right now. So what's going to happen is this, and I'm releasing I'm working on a documentary currently, and it deals with the parallels between the French Revolution and revolutions in Africa. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going to be. And once again, if you haven't subscribed to Up Close and Center, make sure you subscribe to Up Close and Center, and also make sure you hit the like button here. So if you haven't hit the like button, go ahead and click that like button, show your engagement, show that you're enjoying the content. So now, when it comes to the end SARS protest, the third estate, and we have to remember, let's look at demographics, Dynasty.
Go ahead.
Most Nigerians were born, 54% of Nigerians were born after 1995.
Wow.
Just think about that. It's a young country. Most Nigerians, and they grew up with social media, the internet. They grew. I'm slightly older than 95. I was born before that, of course.
Right.
So I grew up with the internet. I grew up with the slower internet, where the guy ran across the screen and you'd hear the motor noises.
Yeah.
That's and you did a little bit. Those are my first experiences with the internet. But now you're dealing with a country where most people never experienced military rule. Because if you were born in 95, 96, sure, Abacha was there. But as a 3 or 4-year-old, what do you really understand about politics? You don't understand politics till maybe you start getting around 13, 14 years old. And you're talking about 2007, 2008, 2009, where we're soundly in the democracy of Nigeria. So now you have a population that's largely never experienced military rule, largely never experienced a dictator, largely experienced the internet, so they're more exposed than the current generations ever were.
Right.
There are some people that keep up with America in Africa more than some Americans in America. Right. And they're sitting in Africa. So Africans now are way more exposed. They grew up, let's look at Nigeria, for example, grew up believing that this is a democracy. I've read on the internet that a democracy has these rights. Everyone has a camera. We can pull out our cameras and we all become reporters. So there's no such thing as media censorship in these days, because all someone needs is a smartphone and connection to the internet, and it can become news. It can go viral. So everyone's now a reporter. So now this is a different country than we had just 30 years ago. So now this generation of young people, here's what's going to happen. The protests are eventually going to die down, I personally believe. Right. I believe that the embers, I believe it was a bright fire that was burning. It lasted 13 days, which is a long time. 13 days of protests is a long time.
What's going on sporadic in certain spots?
It's sporadic. It's not like it was before. Before, it had a greater impact.
Somebody calling me from Nigeria. Speaking of, go ahead.
So now what we're witnessing are the embers of it. It's kind of dying off. It's still strong in certain places, but in regards to it being a national movement, it's kind of now dying down. But what happened is that the third estate, or the youth, the common man, the young person who it's their future that is being wasted, they're the ones who have united and said, you know what, we're forgetting about tribe, race, state, religion, anything of that nature. We're looking at it as we're the youth, and this is our inheritance because we're going to inherit this country. So now they found their voice, and the youth have a momentum because they make up a majority of the population. So now if the youth of Nigeria are smart, they're going to say, you know what? we realized how many of us there are. If you looked at any of the videos of those protests, you looked at the sheer number of young people all over the nation, you realized, oh my goodness, see how many young people there are in this nation. Anyone that can get in front of that momentum and position themselves to say, you know what, I'm going to act on accord in behalf of the youth, and I'm going to be sincere in my actions, and I'm going to reflect the will of the people. And they do it from a sincere position, not from an opportunistic position. That person is going to easily be able to be put in power to make sufficient change.
Let's see. So we have a super chat. Capitalism is a commoditization of human rights.
Wow, that's a strong statement. That's a very strong statement. Capitalism more so accounts for man's greed, because every human being is greedy. Now, if I tell you, I'm going to hire you and I'm going to give you this job, I can start you at 50,000, or I can start you at 150,000, and you're going to do the same amount of work. You just check the box for 50,000 or 150,000. 99.999% of people would check the box to make more money, whether they needed it or not. Even if all of their bills could be satisfied by only making $27,000 a year, for the fact that they can make more, they will.
All right, Antonio,
so
go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, brothers?
Doing well.
Hey,
doing well. We're doing okay.
Blessings. So, for me, capitalism, pure capitalism, is not a way to go for Africa. If we looking at the birth of capitalism, which was slavery, which came out of feudalism and serfdom, if you look at it, the free market has always existed. So there are good things with capitalism. You know, it pressures, technology, new things to come up with new ideas. But if you look at it, what's going on in here in America is stifling creativity. Because what capitalism, well, the purpose of capitalism is to make a return on your money. So
no, that's not. Let me just clear a few things up. And you have to remember, the capitalism wasn't born out of feudalism. Feudalism was a different system altogether. Capitalism has always kind of been around. Now the definition of capitalism, and you have to remember, there's a difference between the capitalism that was practiced here in this country of America than in other places. And I stated that briefly, as the capitalism was weaponized against certain segments of the population in this country. But now we have to take a step back and look at it holistically. Capitalism just means that the people own the industries, not the government. That's it. The people own the industries. Like, for example, let's say, what type of business do you think you could start in the next 5 years?
Let's just say, I don't know, making widgets.
Widgets. I like that. So now let's say you wanted to make widget A because the market is full of widget B, and you have a strong feeling that widget A is going to make a comeback. And you say, you know what, let me be the person to produce widget A. In a capitalist society, you can do that, right? Now, if the scale tilted more towards socialism, then you may need the government you may have to petition the government to say, hey, look, government, widget A is going to come back in style. We need more of widget A. Can you open up a business selling widget A? Now, I feel that I know how to manage a widget A factory, so I can potentially run it, but government, can you open that up, right? So capitalism, it just means that the people can own businesses. It's not a bad word. It's something that we as global Black people have to embrace, because everyone comes to the African continent as a capitalist. Everyone, and I think you might have an echo in the back, brother. Do you have this open on another platform?
Yeah. Antonio, you're echoing a little bit, but we'll find it.
Let me mic it then. But for me, this is what I'm saying. Even in feudalism, let me make sure it's not on. Yeah, even in feudalism, the private citizens own property. They own their farmland and whatever they do.
Well, it depends. Now, under feudalism. Now, what you had under feudal, let's look at the French. France during, for example, the 1700s, 1800s, before they got rid of the monarchy and the weighty feudal system, they had 3 estates. They had the first estate, the second estate, the third estate. The first estate were the clergy. priests. They made up less than 0.3% of the population. The second estate were the nobility, just the rich kids that were born to noble families. They made up 1.6% of the population. So if you combine the two estates, the clergy and the rich kids, you have 2% of the population. The 98% of the population were the common man, right? Or the third estate. Within the third estate, you had a very small middle class made up of engineers, lawyers, doctors, and the skilled peasants who were elevated because they had so much skill, but they couldn't really be bosses or managers or supervisors because they weren't born to nobility, right? They made up less than 5% of the 98%. Now you had low wage earners and then you had peasants. Low wage earners were people like the shoemakers, the blacksmiths, the people that could make horseshoes. They had skills that made them valuable, more valuable than a peasant. All a peasant could do was essentially work on a farm and do what they're told. Now, if you didn't have any skills like being a blacksmith or a mason or a leather worker, you were relegated to being a landless peasant. Now, the landless peasants were landless because they were never paid enough to get up off the plantation. It wasn't a plantation, but it was basically a plantation. They were sharecroppers, and the reason that they were in that condition is because they didn't have enough land to farm themselves. They could never get enough money to buy land, and they didn't have any skills that could generate higher income. So now the only land that they would typically buy would be the length and width of their body in order to have a burial plot when they died after a very unfulfilled life. So they technically they could own land, but systematically they were never going to be in a position to own land. It's like saying, yeah, you theoretically could own an airline, but it might not be feasible, but you have the possibility. So the peasants could own land, but they were systematically locked out due to the condition of their birth.
Well, in the feudalism, you couldn't own land. Everything was owned by the nobles and the kings. And so the virus.
No, you could. You can own land.
Well, I'm talking strictly about Europe. Maybe not Africa, but Europe.
Yeah,
their form of it.
You couldn't own land. No, you could. You could own land. You had people within the third estate. You had the high wage earners and the low wage earners who typically owned land. Now, the people who didn't own land, they would work all their lives just to get enough money to bury themselves. They would own land. What I'm telling you is, let's just move past that point. But you could own land.
Yeah. I want to get past that. So let me say this: in America here now, I say the reason that capitalism is a failed because it's built in failures every 7 to 10 years. A recession is built in. It requires the government to come and bail them out. It's a form of socialism where they come and bail out the corporations, but not the people. Right now, if you look at the virus that's hitting America, you can see how it's failed because the means of masks, gowns, the tests, this all private industry. So it's not profitable for them to hold those things and store them in case we need it in case of a virus, because it could be 5 years, it could be 20 years before a plague hits. So it's not profitable to store them. But they do that.
Those things don't take a long time to construct, though. And here's the thing: what you have to remember is that this country isn't purely capitalist. This country is largely socialist. This country is largely socialist.
Yeah, for the rich.
No, well, let me explain. Just hear me out, Antonio. The thing is this: here's what a pure and here's the problem is that most people don't understand what capitalism is. They don't understand what living in a purely capitalistic society is. African nations today are more capitalistic than America. Africans practice more capitalism than Americans. Here's why. In America, if you ever get hurt, you know that you can call 911 and an ambulance that you didn't pay for, doctors, nurses, EMTs that you didn't pay for, but your taxes paid for will come and get you. If you get robbed and you call 911 and they say, you know what, we're going to need you to send us, cash app us $50 so we can put gas in our cars. And then we're going to come down and investigate. And all the stuff we use to investigate, we're going to give you a bill so that you can pay for, and then we're going to charge you per hour to do this investigation of this murder. That's what a purely capitalistic society looks like, and we don't live in that. Now, when you go to Africa, when we go to Africa, you may need to give the police money to fuel their cars to drive out and do what you need them to do. So when we talk about capitalism, this country doesn't truly practice true capitalism. There's a lot of socialism mixed in because you yourself are the beneficiary of socialism. You didn't go to a private school, I'm assuming.
No.
You went to like a high school, middle school, elementary school, correct?
Yes.
And then you went to a public university, correct?
No.
If you went, I'm not. Okay, but you went to a high school, middle school, and you never paid for any of those, right? You didn't pay for high school. You never got a tuition bill for all those books they gave you for the teacher's time. You never got anything from elementary school to when you went to prom. You never paid a bill to the school.
No, that was paid through taxes for the common good of the people.
Exactly.
So through the tax.
So what that is that's socialism, because we as the society have deemed it fit that everyone should be educated up until a basic level. Then after that, it's on you. You can go and get 10 PhDs. You can just say, you know what, let me learn a skill. So this country has a lot of socialism. It's not truly capitalistic in the sense that a lot of people believe. And that's what I'm trying to remove people from, is the instant knee-jerk reaction to capitalism. Because, for example, are you from America?
Yes.
Does your ancestry go back to the people that generated the wealth of this country?
Slavery, yes.
Boom. All right. So now you're in a position, and you're very fortunate, because you have complete and unfettered access to the American economy outside of the fact that the obvious, right? The obvious. Now, you might not want to go and work for somebody who's from a different culture because of the obvious. So being that you're in the position that you're in, you might want to start your own venture so you can truly be the boss. But you're blessed because you can generate a lot of dollars. And the thing about dollars is that the money you make here, you probably don't understand the type of life you could live overseas in Africa with the money that you make here. Dynas was just talking about $90 a month for rent. So your power is greater overseas than it is here. So now if you own something or have something, or you realize that, you know what, I can get with maybe 10 of my guys out here and set up a processing plant in this city close to where the natural resources are. And the fact that I'm in this country gives me access to a lot of resources of this country. I can now go ahead and play the middleman and take advantage of the fact that this processing of this raw material needs to take place. That's a purely capitalistic move. And so what African Americans in particular need to do is embrace capitalism, especially on the African continent. Because that's not
pure capitalism. I'm sorry.
Well, let's not split hairs. Let's just understand the overall message. So now other groups are doing that. You can't get mad if Chinese see mines and they go ahead and set up extracting and other type of facilities, and then people start complaining, oh, the Chinese are in Africa, oh, the Lebanese are in Africa, oh, the Indians are in Africa. The better thing to do would be to say, okay, what are they doing in Africa that's attracting them? Because they're leaving their countries, which are supposedly more developed, to go to these African third world nations in order to set up shop. Let me copy and see what they're doing. Let me not reinvent the wheel. Oh, they're doing this? I think I can outcompete them in this. I'm a better businessman than they are. I'm going to go compete with them heads up.
That's not what I'm saying to you. That's not true capitalism. In my definition of it, is not a worker, or it's an investor. It's somebody who does not work. He's not a middleman. He's not a manager. Let me
ask you a question. What's your definition of capitalism? Because the definition of capitalism is a system where private citizens control the means of production. That's the textbook definition of capitalism. So, I mean, you can have your own definition, but at the end of the day, we have to limit ourselves to the definition.
The worker doesn't control. The middleman doesn't control the means of production.
The worker never controls. The thing is, the person who is smart enough to open up the business that employs that worker. Look, for example, the house always wins. So, for example, let's say me and you are sitting around and you're like, we're both unemployed. And you say, man, it would be great to have a job. And I say, me too. And I say, you know what? Let me go ahead and create a job that's going to employ you and me and a bunch of other people. And you say, great, let me know when you do that. And then I come back 6 months later and say, hey, I remember that thing I wanted to create? I've created it. So now you can come and get a job at my factory, and so can 30 other people. If you have anybody that you want to recommend, go ahead and recommend that. Right? Okay. Now, because I did the legwork, I'm going to be rewarded more than the person who merely sat around and waited for me to create and take advantage of an opportunity to create a system that's going to be able to economically empower them. See, capitalism just merely pays people who go out there and put in the legwork.
The pure capitalist is neither a worker nor he's the owner. He owns. So what I'm saying to you is that the person who invests his money, his capital, he's controlling it. and he's looking for a return on what he invested. If I can't get a return, I lose my investment. So what's going on here in America is that they're stifling creativity, because if I invest in, let's say I invest in you or Prince Dinas to create something, the thing that's going to stop my returns on my money is somebody else making it faster, quicker, better somewhere else. And so it creates a hostile environment to where they start with patents and tying you up in lawyers and everything else here in America, where it's stifling creativity.
Well, patents actually protect creativity, but we're not going to get into that. That might be a little bit slightly off topic. But here's the thing, and it seems as if you fear the word capitalism because, for example, in this country, capitalism was weaponized against a certain group that you fall into, meaning that the system was, everything within the system that we live in is weaponized against certain segments of the population. We're all victims of the system that we live in, and we all know what system I'm referring to. So now within that system, you get victimized by different things, and the capitalistic system was used to victimize a certain group because they had their labor extracted and they didn't get the money or the wealth that was properly should have been given to them, and generations now have been going without that wealth. Now, because they've been going without that wealth, they've now looked at capitalism and said, wait a minute, capitalism did me wrong. Well, it wasn't really capitalism. It was capitalism being weaponized against certain groups in order to do them wrong. But capitalism in and of itself is just an economic system. It's not good or bad.
Right. So there's two more things I want to say real quick. Capitalism didn't just harm us. Right now, it's harming the whole world. It's about making as much profit for your investors for year after year after year, and it's at the cost of regulation, pollution to the earth, pollution to our health, destruction and safety. It's a vicious beast that requires growth by any means necessary, and it's dangerous without it being controlled. There's a new system popping up in Italy that's been happening for the past 40 years, where there's a family, they're having a hybrid mix, kind of similar to China, but it's worker-owned co-ops. See, to me, Africa is the first communities, first villages, first societies, as far as social, not I wouldn't say socialism, but when you had your community, hey, if you eat, we all eat. If there's a war, we all fight. And you grow from there. So when I'm looking at the new system that's going to be birthed out of this failed system, it's going to be a hybrid model to where you have shares of a company. The workers are the only ones who own the shares, not some CEO who just wants his profits year after year. So for me, I'm looking at capitalism as the pure investment and my return by any means as being a danger. Because right now,
the brother, go ahead and continue, but the brother dropped off. He'll be back on shortly.
Okay. So for me, when I look at America, we produce missiles, weapons in case of a war. Well, the capitalists, those are built by capitalists. So they said we need profits. So you look at the military industrial complex, we're increasing the military budget year after year after year. We got all these weapons sitting around with nobody to buy them or use them. So we start to create wars to use them up. So for me, pure capitalism can lead to greed, gluttony, unknown riches for some, and a lot of poverty for others. Because if you look at where capitalism birthed from, it was birthed from colonialism. And you look from where colonialism, wherever it went, poverty, pollution, destruction of the earth followed.
All right. Oh, here we go. Ebube's back now. Hold on one second. There we go. All right, I lost you for a second, brother.
All right, looks like I'm back. All right, great. Hey, Antonio, as you were saying?
Well, I was saying that I don't know if you heard me or anything that I said, but I was just saying that for me,
somehow connection timed out.
Oh, no, I was just saying that, for me, the pure capitalism that we have here in America is that we produce things for the common good, like you say, education, health, a little bit of healthcare to a certain extent, but we do produce a lot of weapons in case for war, and that has led to perpetual use of war because all these private
So what
industries.
system, let me just cut to the chase. What system would you suggest that the American economy be based on, and why? And then the second question is, what system would you say that African economies need to be based on, and why?
Well, I think it's a mixture of both. I think both Africa and America needs to be based on a worker-owned co-op type of industry. We're not
communist. So communism.
Well, no, this not.
Listen, just say communism. If you believe in communism, just say communism. There's nothing wrong with that. I know plenty of people that believe communism is the best system. However, what I'm going to say to you is currently America is a mix of capitalism and socialism.
Let's not say it's communism. It's a capitalism. It's capitalism.
Antonio, just hear me out. The thing is, America is a mix of capitalism and socialism, and it's a pretty good mix here. If you want to start a business today, you can start it up. There's nothing wrong with that. The entire issue on this particular broadcast is that we need more capitalism in Africa. We need more capitalists, because currently what happens in Africa is a lot of African nations are poor. For example, how are you poor when you export diamonds? How are you poor when you export crude oil? Now we have capitalists like Dangote, for example, stepping up and saying, you know what? We can get a lot more money for this crude oil that we send out, pay somebody to refine it, and then sell it back to us. The reason that's happening is because we don't have enough capitalists to say, you know what, rather than us buying back the product that we gave to these people, we need to process and develop this. What I'm going to do is I, as the private sector, I'm not going to allow the Chinese, the Lebanese, or the Indians to come in and do this. I'm going to do this myself. We need more capitalists on the African continent, period, because the definition of capitalism, which I don't believe you're truly aware of, the definition of capitalism is merely where the people own the means of production, meaning that the people own the industries, as opposed to the government owning the industries. Now, when faced with those two options, would you rather have Coca-Cola owned by the American government and managed by the president and his administration, or are you okay with saying Coca-Cola is in the hands of private individuals? That's the only difference. So now in Africa, the government isn't nationalizing and stepping in to own and create all of these industries. Therefore, we need the private sector to now step up and say, let's process these, because you have to remember there's a difference between what makes a nation rich and what makes a nation poor. What makes a nation, it looks like we've lost Antonio, but I'll continue. What makes a nation rich is that they're able to process those raw materials, because people have stepped up and said, let's go ahead and create these processing and manufacturing plants and add wealth to this nation.
All right, go ahead,
Lamine. Lamine, is it Lemon or Lamine?
Actually, that's a very common question that I get, but you can pronounce it either way. It's fine. So as long as you don't.
So which way does your mother pronounce it?
Sorry. Actually, Lamin. It's an A, but it sounds like a double A.
Sierra Leone, right? Sierra Leone?
Actually, I've been asked by Dinas where I'm from Sierra Leone before, but very close. I'm from the Gambia, by the way.
Gambia, okay.
Yeah. I have a lot of Sierra Leonean brothers, in my country.
What do you have on the topic?
Sorry?
So what do you have on the topic, brother?
Actually, I have quite a few topics that I want to discuss regarding capitalism. So
we
got other people, so we can't,
So we want to keep it on topic. The topic is this: is that there's a statement, right? Capitalism in Africa, is it good or bad? I say we need more capitalists because currently we have a lot of underdeveloped raw materials that we merely sell to nations, and then they turn around and sell it back to us. We sell it to capitalistic nations who take advantage of the opportunity that we don't process or manufacture anything. They process and manufacture those things and then sell it back to us at prices that many of us can't afford on the continent. So rather than allowing them to sell us things that we gave them at prices higher than what we gave it to them for, we now say, let's process these within the country and create jobs and create wealth within the country. We need more capitalism. It's great to daydream about other systems being implemented, but until we control the worldwide system, we can't change this system. So therefore, we live under a majority capitalistic system. Therefore, we got to learn how to play the game rather than shunning the game, and we have to learn how to play it well. Once we take world power, if that day comes, then we can say, you know what? We want all nations to change to this system. But currently, no African nation has that power to change the global economic system. Therefore, we have to learn how to play within the system to enrich ourselves and empower ourselves. Okay. What do you have on the topic, brother?
Yeah, actually, I want to take have my take on what the last brother was saying. I think I know where he's coming from. However, like these other alternative systems that people that have been talking about, in an ideal world, it might work, but right now, I think the best bet we have as Africans is capitalism. I don't want to concede that. I've been one of the few people actually that have been talking about these other ideologies apart from capitalism. However, right
Like,
now, sorry?
Which ideologies would you potentially suggest that America and/or Africa run?
Now, I've been meddling with socialism and communism, but honestly, if I'm being honest with myself,
well, there's more socialism in America than Africa. There's more socialism in America than Africa. For example, in Africa, you don't have Medicare, Medicaid,
I agree. I agree.
If your house is on fire in some places in Africa, you have to run and get your neighbors to help you put it out. There's nobody you can call. There's no socialist system that you can tap into in order to save your burning house in certain parts of Africa. So we have to realize that America actually practices way more socialism than we've ever even seen on the African continent. It's the African continent where it's truly a capitalistic society, meaning your money directly determines the rate and the lifestyle that you're going to live on the continent. So what we need is we need more people to look at Dangote's example and say, you know what? He realized that it was foolish for us to sell crude oil to people who would turn around, refine it for us, and sell it back to us. Are we fools? Shebi, you get?
Sorry.
So
my phone is ringing.
It only makes sense for us to imbibe that spirit.
You there, Lamin?
Yeah, apologies. It was just my alarm. I had to turn it off.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Ebube, can I ask you a question, real quick? I heard a term from a friend of mine. I think we discussed this about a few years ago. He named it. Since you are talking about America being more socialist than Africa, right? He mentioned a term called socialist capitalism. Have you heard that term before? It might be the other way around.
It depends on who defines it. Yeah, it depends on who defines it. And you have to remember, all nations are a mix of capitalism and socialism. So, for example, in America, it's a mix of capitalism and socialism, and the fact that most people in this country get free educations through the socialist education programs that were set up to ensure that everybody had a basic level of arithmetic and literacy. So, yes, America, but at the same time, there's capitalism. There's no such thing as a purely socialist economy, and no such thing as a purely capitalist economy. It's a mix of the two. And most people don't realize that America has a lot of socialism. I named a bunch of programs that don't exist in other countries. There's no socialism. There's no Social Security. There's no Medicare. There's no Medicaid. 911 is really not existent in a lot of African nations. If you go and you need the fire service. So what we have to realize is that America, for example, has a lot of, to the point where someone like Bernie Sanders, who's a socialist, can run for president. So we have a lot of socialism in this country. It's just that for some reason, we don't necessarily call it what it is.
Okay, yeah, that's good. The definition. I didn't want to stick too long in the definition thing because I know it can go so far. Like we can get caught up in like the terms and what it means. But I think it's good that if we look at it historically, and like what has been working like for people, let's stick to that. And honestly, right now I think capitalism is what seems to be working. So let's try to imitate that. I'm not actually a big fan of capitalism because I want to talk about like what the last brother said. Like if capitalism is used, it's like a weapon. I think you touched on that basically. If used wrongly, it's not going to work. If used in the right way, it's going to work. And right now, unless Africa comes up with like a new revolutionary system that actually is in the term what it says, revolutionary, let's stick with what's working. And what's been working for the Western world, which we are trying to imitate, is capitalism. So yeah, it doesn't sound good.
Well, you have to remember that Africa, we've had capitalism for thousands of years. That was a system that ran. Socialism is a new system that came up after certain nations reach a certain level of wealth. They can now say, you know what, we're going to tax everybody to this extent because there are basic things that we need. So, for example, if you ever lived with roommates back in college, whenever you lived with two of your friends to keep the amount that you paid for rent down, certain things like, for example, if what you spend on your bed and your blankets, that's capitalism. But the stuff that you guys put in the kitchen, and if you guys all go shopping together and then you split the bill, that's socialism, right?
It sounds like you're reading my mind, actually, but yeah, carry on.
Both systems work hand in hand. And so I just want to let people know that capitalism isn't a dirty word. Now, in this country, like I said, capitalism was weaponized against certain groups, and certain groups are owed wealth that they need to get back, that they were denied via the weaponization of capitalism. But if we step away from that and we just look at it purely for what the definition is, the definition of capitalism is a system, an economic system, where the people control the means of production. Now, it's a system where people control the means of production. So now, for example, let's say that me and Dynast are of the same ethnic group and you're a different ethnic group, and I make it in such a way where only people like me and Dynast can control all of the industries. At that point, I'm weaponizing capitalism. So somebody like you who's now been left out of the system, you're going to feel a certain way. And you're going to say, you know what? I hate capitalism because capitalism has excluded me from the system. So when somebody says capitalism, you're going to say, oh, I dislike capitalism. But it's not capitalism. It's the fact that capitalism was weaponized against you. So what we as Africans have to do
as per where I was, actually, that I think you came to the same point. When utilized in a way that doesn't favor you, there's a tendency to not like it. I understand exactly where people come from with that regard. But if you look at it closely, it's actually a fair system. It is a fair. It's not going to favor everybody. It's just the biggest competitor comes out on top. That's how I see it, though. So I might be wrong if anybody wants to contest that.
Well, the thing is, it's whoever, it's the most talented takes it. You're absolutely right. Now, let's say you think you can sell oranges better than I can sell oranges, and we're in New York City and we're on 125th Street. I'm going to sell my oranges. I'm going to spray them with water. I'm going to make them look better than your oranges. But at the end of the day, the free market decides. If more people come by and buy my oranges, it's just what happened. Now, you might not be able to feed your family selling oranges, and I might be able to feed my family selling oranges. Unfortunately, that's just the system. There are winners and losers. Capitalism is about competition. So now this gets back to the original point. The point of this broadcast is that we need more Africans competing when it comes to the processing of upstream. For example, you take oil. We should have a bunch of people in Nigeria competing to process that oil, to refine that oil into a bunch of products and then distribute them directly to the Nigerian system, as opposed to selling crude oil to a nation who will then refine our oil for us as if we don't have that capacity within the country, only to sell it back to us for a higher price than we sold it to them for. That's a problem. We're losing in the capitalist game when you look at it. So at the end of the day, we need more capitalists to rise up and say, you know what? What we need to refine what we have here. We don't need to give it to another person and close our eyes to the system that we currently live under. We're competing. And if we're competing and we don't step into the race, then we've lost.
Okay. With that in mind, let me just ask my last question, and I'll just leave it there. Because I just want to give chance to other people trying to call in. So with that in mind, it's a very broad question. So feel free to tackle it however you want to. So where do you see technology taking Africa in terms of direction in the few decades coming in? Because I'm working in the technology field, it's specifically programming. So that's what I do in Japan. But I wanted you to broaden the scope of that, maybe outside of just programming. I want to hear your take on that. So, yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna address your question, and I see Pan-Africanism strikes back. I'm gonna get to that question second.
Well, I'm gonna let him on. So go ahead and address the question, and I'll get the next.
Perfect. Then I'll just address Lamin's question now. So Lamin, in regards to Africa, see the thing about Africa is that we're blessed because we don't have any legacy systems. So for example, in America, If you want to now be a phone provider, or you want, there's so much infrastructure that already exists that the government typically allows those who've already laid their infrastructure to continue with the next generation of technology, which means that they have a core and they're kind of stuck to that core. But in Africa, there's no core. We can make the periphery the center, meaning that if we want every street light in Africa to be solar powered, we can do that now, because many places don't have street lights. You've been to Africa just like me, I assume.
Yeah.
So I know in your village, in the Gambia, you probably don't have streetlights there, correct?
Some places, no. Yeah.
Right. So now, if I wanted to put solar powered streetlights in your village, it would be very easy, because there's no legacy system that I have to dig up and take out of the ground. I can just start afresh with solar panel streetlights, correct?
Yes. Is it in the same sense when people say Africa, like you can grow, like there's opportunity to grow? Because I never understood that until recently. When people say there's opportunity to grow, I've been in the West and I was like, isn't it the same? But it's not the same. So I concur.
Well, here's the thing. Look, here's the thing. You can't see, in America, you already have the Nestle's, the Purdue family with the chickens. You already have the Waltons with Walmart. You already have the large entrenched oligarchy business families here that run everything that needs to be done here. But in Africa, you don't have 90% of those things. Who says your family lineage can't be the next Walmart of the Gambia? Right. Nobody. So now it's wide open for somebody to take it. And that's all I'm saying, is that Africans, we need to stop sitting back, allowing other people to come in and play the capitalist game in our own countries better than we play it. That makes no sense, because someone is going to fill that gap, because nature abhors a vacuum. So someone's going to come in and be that family to now take advantage of that. What we need are more capitalist-minded Africans to say, you know what? Let me take advantage of that. Let me and my people take advantage of that, as opposed to waiting on someone else to come from outside and take advantage of it for you. And then you complain on the internet about how these people are dominating you. It makes no sense.
I actually let me get brother. Diners, please, just very quick. I
got to get somebody else on, man. I got to get somebody else on, brother. I'm not trying to make this a 3-hour stream, bro. All right, brother. We appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you for joining, brother.
Hey, good evening, brothers.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
Whoo, man. Peace and blessings to both of y'all, man. I appreciate this opportunity to talk. I've been waiting for a very long time.
You kind of look like the cover of an R&B album right now.
Yeah, I'm in my car. I had to pull over, man. I had to get in part of this conversation, man. Man, when you say that, us as Black people and Africans need to, take advantage of the opportunity, to me, it sounds very similar to, like, if we were to say, slavery was a profitable system, and since if it was in play, we need to take it and put it in play as well. To me, capitalism is as
that's a mischaracterization. The thing is this: slavery was a weaponization of capitalism against certain people, right? So now I brought up the German Shepherd analogy. A German Shepherd is just a dog. But historically, when certain groups came to Africa, they taught the German Shepherd how to attack the African. You know that, right? So now a lot of Africans till this day, when they see German Shepherds, they give it a side eye, right? But there's nothing inherently wrong with a German Shepherd. However, when you weaponize something against the people, they're naturally going to give it a side eye. So slavery was a weaponization of capitalism against a certain group, generated wealth off that group, and then locked them out of the wealth that group generated, which was the most wickedest thing ever. Because now you put those people in a position where they're at the bottom of everything in the country. In terms of wealth, they have the least amount of wealth, own the least amount of businesses, but they created the wealth for everyone else to come in here and profit, which is wicked. You can't exclude the people that generated the wealth. So now
that's what capitalism is.
No, and that's the problem. Capitalism is not that. Well, listen to me. Okay, capitalism is not that. The definition of capitalism is an economic system where the means of production are in private hands. That's it. Now, if those private hands are very wicked people, they're going to do wicked things with that system. It's like a knife or a gun. They're just inanimate objects. But you put the knife or a gun in the hands of somebody who's wicked and looking to do harm. You can blame the knife or the gun all you want, but it's really the person who's looking to do harm, not the knife or the gun. You likewise can pick up the knife or the gun and restore order. So we shouldn't fear the knife or the gun. It's just a tool. The same way they weaponize capitalism is the same way we can weaponize capitalism, because we own the natural resources.
But this is it, sir. Because, like you said, capitalism is about winners and losers. And the winners that are currently running and owning the system right now will never let the disadvantaged people be in position.
No. See, you have it wrong. It's not about letting anybody win. No, listen. It's not about letting anybody win. You don't let anybody do anything. Here's what it is. When it comes to power, and we have to remember the definition of power is twofold. It's knowing what you want to do and being able to get there. So I'm hungry. I know I want something to eat. Can I get something to eat? Yes. Therefore, I have the power to satisfy my hunger. So the definition of power is twofold. It's knowing what you want and having the means to do what you've just decided that you want. So now, it's not about someone letting you have power. You take power. You say, okay, I see the game that you play. You use capitalism like this. I'm going to use capitalism like this.
Well, the reason why I say that is because, again, fundamentally, corruption and the corruptive behavior is built in the system. My particular area of expertise is mental health and psychology, right? And we learn about conditioned responses and what will make a person do something, and what motivates people to do things, right? With capitalism, it motivates you to be corrupt. It motivates you to
bro, those are just untrue statements. Capitalism doesn't motivate anybody to be corrupt. The thing is, if you're a corrupt person, no matter where you are, now here's the thing. The definition of corruption is just bastardizing any system to your benefit or to harm your enemies. The thing is, if you're a corrupt person, the thing is this: if you're a corrupt person and you put the tool of capitalism in your hand, you're going to be corrupt with capitalism as well, right? So it's not capitalism that's the problem. And see, we as Africans, Black people globally, have to understand the fact that capitalism in and of itself is just a tool. It's an economic tool that we as Africans created long before any other economic system. Capitalism is just a system where people like you and I control the means of production. Now, if there's a recent anomaly where they prevent people like you or I from controlling the means of production, that's something different than capitalism. That's systematic oppression. So now if me and you get together and we build a bunch of Black Wall Streets and they say, wait a minute, we don't like you guys controlling the means of production. Only we can control the means of production. And they bomb all the Black Wall Streets. The problem wasn't capitalism. The problem was systematic oppression. So now a lot of people conflate the two and say, wait a minute, we were doing capitalism and look where we are now. Well, no, you're doing capitalism, but we have to remember that the global system is systematic oppression that was set up, and it put certain people at the bottom and certain people at the top. And no matter what they engage in, there's systematic pressures in order to keep them in their predefined positions. So once again, what I'm saying to you is this: you need to imbibe capitalism because, for example, for me, the place I work, I own it. I can't work for anybody. I can't go in somewhere and I work for somebody and I truly feel free. I own where I work. Why? Because I'm a capitalist. I said, you know what? I need to create an opportunity for myself. And by creating an opportunity for myself, eventually I can create opportunities for other people who might not have the mental wherewithal to say, you know what? I want to create my own thing too. Not everybody is a producer. Not everybody is a creator. Not everybody can create something and create opportunities for other people. You look at Dynas, look at the platform we're on now. He created this platform and we're on it sharing ideas. But how many Dynas Demirs are there? So now the thing is, at the end of the day, those who are producers are going to produce and be moved ahead of those who are merely consumers and those who merely wait for the producers to produce and then hop on what those people produced.
Capitalism is already dying in this country due to technology and due to it just in its death throes of a system because of technology getting rid of jobs. Why would we? Because the original question was, is it capitalism bad for Africa? And if we already know that capitalism is dying and we're seeing the outstretched it's in its most bastardized form, with businessmen, entrepreneurs being able to lean into politics. Because, like you said before, you said, would we rather have the services being owned by private people, or would we rather have it owned by the government? And nowadays we can see that line is blurred. And if once you make enough money, you will influence the lawmakers.
And that's how it should be. So, Jonathan, you know what you need to do? You need to, if that's the rules of the game, you need to play it and make enough money to influence policy. Or you can complain about it.
We shouldn't
listen, Jonathan, those are your two options. You just said that those with the money who played the capitalist game right control the rules. Well, then maybe you need to make enough money to control the rules. Or you can just sit around complaining about it. But either way, the game is getting played over your head, whether you're playing the game or not. And the whole point of this program is not enough Africans and not enough African Americans are playing the game. Because you go to Africa and you see Chinese people there who don't even speak the language, don't even have our same phenotype. Why are not more African Americans saying, you know what? Let me play the game and let me look at what they're doing. What? The Chinese aren't smarter than me. The Chinese aren't smarter than you, right? The Lebanese aren't smarter than you, right? So why don't you say, you know what? They're playing the game. Let me step up to play the game with them. Because the thing is, the most capitalist continent on the face of this earth is Africa. Your money directly determines the type of life that you live. What you generate and produce directly creates your life experience. Period. So now either those are the rules or they're not, and they are the rules. So either you play them or you don't. It's all just based on logic. You remove the emotion from it. It's not about emotion. When you hear what the rules are, the rules are this. For example, most women don't want to have a man who's broke. As a man, you know that before you even ask a girl out, you have to have something in your account because you're going to have to pay for the date. Is that fair? No, but those are the rules. If you hand the bill to her and say, hey, can you cover this? She's never going out with you again. Is that fair? No. Those are the rules of the game.
Yeah.
You just got to learn the rules of the game and you got to play it.
I would say we could strive for the rules. And Africa is such a place for development and a place for something new could actually take hold. And having that old way of capitalism be the thing that we take over there, I think is a bad idea. I'll say this and I'll pass on, Mr. Prince, because I know that you want other people on. But there's an answer, and I think if we were more creative, because it's not just about capitalism, socialism, or communism as well. There is other more creative forms of economies, like a resource-based economy, which Africa is in a prime position to really take advantage of.
Most African nations are resource-based economies. But the thing is, you have to remember what makes a nation poor and what makes a nation rich. And if you haven't subscribed to Up Close and Center, I would say go to Up Close and Center.
I will.
I've covered most of the documentaries. So if you haven't gone to Up Close and Center, make sure you go to Up Close and Center and subscribe. And also, too, if you're here right now, make sure you've hit the like button. Make sure your engagement is up. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. But yeah, the thing is, Africa, it's a capitalist. It's pure capitalism out there. Pure capitalism. And a lot of African Americans got to start playing, because at the end of the day, a lot of money is going to be made this century. A lot of billionaires are going to be made. And in all honesty, I would prefer my African American brothers to be making those billions than other groups that don't look like us. That's all I'm saying.
True indeed. And while we're doing that, if we could just strive also, because I agree, this is the game that we're in. This is what's being played. We have to play it. But if we could understand that there is a better way, and we need to be aiming for that better way, and that's outside of capitalism, I think that is the perfect blend of the two. Because like you're saying, this is the game that we're in. This is what we have to play. But if we have an opportunity to get out of the system and to be aiming somewhere else, we need to be aiming out of capitalism, because it is going to lead to another situation. We'll have another America in Africa where a few will own everything, and we'll have a system that propagates a mediocre underclass, because that's what capitalism needs also. It needs
why don't you make sure you're owning something? So, Jonathan, go out and own something. Go out and own. Listen, here's where you start. Like for me,
I will. Jonathan, I'm talking about the brothers. I'm talking about the other ones. I'm talking about everybody else.
Jonathan,
I am, and I will. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Jonathan, listen.
Yes, sir. Yes.
We're talking about me and you. Who cares about everybody else? Talking about me and you. Let everybody else worry about everybody else. Your job is to make sure you're a winner. If you're not a winner, then don't worry about that. The first thing I'm gonna tell you is, do you own where you work? Yes or no?
No, I know, but I have business.
Listen,
right, but no, I don't own where I work. No.
So Jonathan, instead of worrying about everybody else, start with you. Make sure you own where you work. Do that first before you start talking to everybody else. But the thing is, we probably got a couple callers. You know,
Jonathan, what's going on? Everybody take a commercial break. Everyone. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on, bro. All right, cool. Everyone, make sure you guys go to searchforahuru.com. Searchforahuru.com. Let me share the screen real quick. Here we go. Share the screen. Book all your travel. So now you can go to searchforahuru.com and book all your travel, you guys. So when you go to searchforahuru.com, let me share the screen real quick. Click on travel. Okay, then you're going to click on the image to the right. All right, once you're there. All right, when you click on the image to the right, that's going to take you to the portal where you can now start booking your tickets, your flight tickets, your hotels, your car rentals, as well, vacations, cruises, etc. So again, go to searchforahuru.com, click on travel, click on the image, and guys, start booking your trips through Search for Uhuru. Everyone, start booking your trips through Search for Uhuru. Okay, next caller, everyone. Let's see here. We got the brother. Willie Fungo, and then Brandon and Sub-Zero. I'm gonna bring you guys on together. So, go ahead, Willie.
All right. So capitalism is non-negotiable. It's a law of nature. It's survival of the fittest. Now, obviously, if you look at a pack of animals, the slowest, dumbest one is going to have a problem with the law of nature because they can't win in that. But I resent this idea that Black people have to identify with losers who can't compete with other groups. So we have to somehow fear capitalism. That's ridiculous. If that's how, like, as for the other caller, if that's the way you view yourself and if that's the way you view your people, good for you. But there's Black people out here who are ready to compete and take over. You can stay being a whiny bitch if you want.
Hey, come on now. We gotta watch the language.
But that's what it is. These people are just whiners and losers. Now, one thing you said, Ebube, that I disagree with. Africa is not more capitalist than the United States. Yes, America has social services that's socialist in a way, but capitalism is more about the means of production. Socialist countries are the countries where the means of production is controlled by the government. That's not the case in the United States. If you look at Ghana, for example, if you grow cocoa, you have to sell it to the government. That's socialism. That kills that industry.
That's Ivory Coast too, unfortunately.
Yeah. And if you look at Nigeria, Dangote tried to make his refinery in 2007. The government blocked him because they wanted to control that industry. And NNPC recently,
which they failed at. And you know that they failed. The refineries, Wari, they've been moribund for how many years now? So the thing is, they were afraid of private sector. They were afraid of capitalism because the thing is, they had the government monopoly on it, and they haven't been able to make those run in 30 years.
And NNPC released its audit this year. The refinery lost $450 million. They lost $450 million. The head of the refinery in Kaduna, he was paying himself $20,000 a year. That's what socialism looks like. It's a failing, terrible system. The governments in Africa, that's part of the reason why we have not been able to develop as quickly as other regions. We have over-regulated, and the government is just controlling too much stuff. And whenever there's government, there's corruption. In the post-independence period, in the 60s and 70s, it made sense to have the government involved because we did not have domestic companies that could do these things. I understand why they fell into that. Now we do.
And that's why a lot of people are saying the government needs to be hands off because the government has shown that they can't run things the way they need to be ran. And that's why people like you sound pretty intelligent. That's why people like you need to say, you know what, let me fill in the gaps because we're at the point in Nigeria where it's hands down that the government can't do what they've put themselves out to be able to do, right? They've gotten into certain sectors of the economy and they failed woefully. Like you brought up the refineries. Those things were money pits, right? And so it's at the point where it's undeniable that they're running at a loss year in and year out. Why are we allowing the government to have this? Privatization is what's about to sweep the country. And what we need to have, and it's not just Nigeria, it's other African countries as well. And what we need to have is the capitalistic mind state to say, you know what? Let me go ahead and step in, because what we don't have in Africa is industrialization, processing, taking the raw materials, turning them into the things that other nations need, and then selling to them and keeping the wealth and the jobs within our nation. There shouldn't be any unemployment in a place where the natural resources come from. They come from the soil. Process them there. People will have to process them. They will have jobs. They will have salaries. They'll spend their money within the economy. Before you know it, poverty is alleviated. Poverty is a creation, and it's created when you don't have enough capitalists in society that are keeping the money within the nation, because capitalists are coming from overseas and abroad and taking advantage of the fact that you guys are sitting here with all these natural resources that they're going to come through and process and then sell back to you because they're smarter than you. If you allow someone to sell the resources that left your shore, they process them and sell them back to you for 10 times the amount, they're clearly smarter than you. So we're allowing other nations and other cultures and other groups to be smarter than us when we're some of the smartest people on the face of the earth. So yes, we need to imbibe capitalism and make sure that we process our raw materials into products that we can sell globally, rather than buying those same products back from those nations that processed it from the things that we gave them.
Exactly. That's the reason why Nigeria has not benefited from all the oil. We sell the oil, we buy it back. So all the money that we made from selling it, we have just paid that back out to the people who refined it. That's the problem. And I remember in the show last night, Lou Major made a lot of great points. One mistake that he did make was that he said that the West needs Africa to be poor. That is not the case. It was at some point.
I will say this. I agree with Lou Major on that, and I actually covered that on an episode of France. But I'll say this. I covered that on an episode of France and Africa. Europe does need Africa to be poor, because the thing is this: Europe needs Africa to supply them with raw natural resources that are unprocessed and undeveloped, because the whole European economy is based on developing raw materials from Africa. Europe doesn't have any raw materials. So now if Africans started cutting out the middleman, which is Europe, and develop their own resources by themselves, the question is, what would Europe do? The answer is nothing.
You're stuck in the 60s. Europe is not an industrial power anymore. It's a post-industrial economy. Their economies are based on services now. China isn't.
Let's follow the logic. Services. No, let's follow the logic, because you'll see it comes back to my point. Services based on what? Please answer that question.
In the UK, banking, for example, does not require
banking based on the trade of what? Commodities, different things of that nature.
But if you want to go into commodities, you have to let me finish. Listen,
they moved away from directly needing the resources of Africa to be brought to their shore, to moving to a place where they merely regulate the trade of the resources that come out of Africa. But if you follow it down the rabbit hole, it's still the same thing. It's still the same system, just reinvented and reinvigorated. That's it. Nothing has changed. They merely made the system more sophisticated to the point where they don't have to touch the resources to benefit off the resources. It's still the same system.
Where the resources are coming from. For the most part, natural resources are not coming from Africa. Yes, diamonds come from Botswana. Oil comes from Nigeria, but Nigeria is only 2% of the oil industry. We don't export coal.
That's not true.
You have to let me finish.
They're about 5.6%. They're 5.6%.
It's not that big of a difference. We don't export coal. We don't export iron. We don't export that much gold. If you look at copper, it's from Peru. If you look at iron, it's from Brazil. China produces more gold than any African country. Australia produces more resources than probably all of Africa combined. Same with Canada. That's where the resources come from. The problem in Africa is not that someone is stealing our resources. It's not that anyone is keeping us poor. The problem in Africa is that we have failed to implement free market reforms. China, if the West was so concerned with keeping other countries poor, and they were at some point, but now, if they were so concerned about that now, then why did they let China industrialize?
Willie, here's the thing. We're moving slightly off topic, but what I will say is this. rather than us splitting hairs, I will say this, right? When it comes to Africa, what we need is we need more people in Africa. And when I say Africans, I mean the B1 community, right? Because I include African Americans among Africans because at the end of the day, that's the real diaspora that we need to tap into. That's the only diaspora that has a legitimate claim to Africa. Every other group is an invader or a guest. The only group that don't have to be born in Africa to, in my opinion, be able to claim Africa are Black Americans in the diaspora. Now, within Black Americans in the diaspora, there's a lot of wealth and a lot of skills and a lot of opportunities that are being passed over, and other groups are taking advantage of those opportunities to the chagrin of most Africans and most African Americans. And what we need more African Americans and more Africans to embrace capitalism, because at the end of the day, capitalism is merely controlling the means of production. So if you control the means of production, you can now create wealth in your nation. If you don't control the means of production and you have to sell something to another person to produce it for you and turn it into what you need and then sell it back to you, you can only be a fool for so long. And that's all that we're talking about.
The reason why I think we need to address that issue I mentioned earlier is because it's the biggest stalling tactic that we currently face. If we think that outside groups are what is keeping us poor, the only solution to our problem is military conflict. And that is basically...
No, it's not outside groups. I didn't say that. You have to be very careful with the words that you use. The problem... No, listen, William, let's make sure we say things correctly, because you can't quote me and misquote me, because I will check you. So now the thing is, when it comes down to what's keeping Africa poor, the thing that's keeping Africa poor is that poor nations, you have to realize the difference between rich nations and poor nations. Poor nations merely sell unprocessed raw materials to richer nations who have a developed industrial base to develop and process those same raw materials and then sell them back to the nations at origins at prices that many can't afford. And in the process of them processing, they've created jobs in transportation, logistics, processing, accounting. They've created a sophisticated, robust economy based on the fact that you're not creating that same sophisticated, robust economy within your nation. That's our problem. So our problem is internal, but it's also external. It's internal because we're not doing what we need in-house. And because we're not doing what's needed in-house, we're opening the door for someone else to come from outside and do our job for us. So the problem is internal and it's external. We in Africa need to embrace capitalism and work on the upstream. Yes, we have crude oil, but are we processing it and distributing it to the rest of the world, or are we letting them sell it back to us? Yes, we have cocoa, but what was the last time you heard of a Ghanaian chocolate company that's worldwide, like Nestle or Hershey's or any of these other companies? Places where they don't have cocoa. See, our problem is internal and external. We need to get on code and put ourselves together and take advantage of the natural resources that God gave us. We can't sit around praying and hoping that God changes things when God said, hey, look, I gave you the natural resource. What you do with it is your business. If you're not taking advantage of it, nature abhors a vacuum. Someone else is going to take advantage of it. So yes, it's internal, but it's also external, but we internally can solve the external problem. So when you quote me, make sure you quote me correctly, because I'm very particular with words.
It is mainly Lou Major that I heard making that point. We agree on most things. I guess we can leave that issue alone. Now, when it comes to Nigeria...
It really, this will be the last comment. I got to get somebody else on here.
Okay. Yeah, so let me just end on a good note. So things are definitely moving in the right direction. The Nigerian Airlines failed. The government-owned one failed. Now we have at least 5 privately owned airline companies. We have Eric Air, many others, and they're starting to fly to international locations, Dubai and others. Profitable companies, great. The refining industry, great. Fertilizer, all of these things are really starting to pick up. Once the government got out of the way and let the free market start solving problems, that's how this development is going to go. And in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see a lot of progress in Nigeria in particular.
All right, brother.
For sure.
Appreciate you coming on, Willie.
It's a pleasure talking to you, Willie. Take care, brother.
Yeah. Peace.
All right, go ahead, Sub-Zero.
Hey, what's going on? Do I sound good? Amen, man. What's up, brother? I actually appreciate what you're saying. You don't hear a lot of people in our community really espousing capitalism. A lot of us, and I think this attitude breeds more apathy and fear in Black people, African Americans. That okay, well, no need in trying. The white man won't let me. And I despise that mentality. And I think also one of the biggest things that hurts us is when we talk about slavery, we look at it from the perspective of, okay, slavery happened 1865, and then we just jump all the way and skip over the Industrial Revolution, Cornelius Vanderbilt, John Rock, all these people who, although they may have been racist, took investments, risk, and it took ingenuity to get where they were to have the Industrial Revolution. And it should be an example and a model. And then, something that, like, for example, if you just go back 20 years, the top 10 wealthiest companies, with 5 of them, like, I think weren't even on the list. Like, they weren't, you get what I'm saying? Like, the wealthiest companies they changed. So what you may feel like, okay, it's over in America, we can't do this, we can't do that. Had someone thought, because people were saying that when I was a kid, and yet money and wealth was made.
Google, look at Amazon.
And that's exactly what I was saying. Google, ABC company, whatever. These guys came out of I ain't gonna say out of nowhere, but they jumped out. These guys were 2 people at Stanford University in the mid-90s trying to lease and sell their search engine to Yahoo, who turned it down, right? Sergey Brin, and I forget the other guy's name. But these guys, so wealth is being created, man. And it's like, I feel as though it's popular in our community to feel that capitalism is bad. Another thing, corporatism is the difference. There's a difference in corporatism and capitalism. And people corporatism is basically using the government to gain an advantage and shutting off your competition. That is not free market that's not a free market. Then if I get a complete lock on the on the weed dispensaries across the country, and I block everyone else from getting in there, people are blaming on capitalism, and that would not be capitalism. I basically have shut off all my competitors, and I have a dominance of the market. That's corporatism. Those are 2 different things. And so you see a lot of people when they pay lobbyists to go and get them an unfair advantage, and we call it cap. I'm like, no, that's not. Those are 2 different things.
Brother, you're right. And a lot of people conflate capitalism. That's why I keep saying that. Look, capitalism can be weaponized. You don't want to look at the weaponization of capitalism as the definition of capitalism. That's why I kept saying the definition of capitalism is merely where the people own the means of production. That's
what I'm saying. So capitalism also, one more thing, I think capitalism has given Americans, a poor American can have 2 cars, a 5 iPhone, 3 pairs of $200 Jordans, right?
Sub-Zero, you went out, bro. Sub-Zero,
your microphone's going out a little bit.
Now, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Perfect.
Yeah, what I was saying was a poor American can have a quality of life.
Sub-Zero, you went back out, bro. You went back out.
Yeah, somebody keeps calling me, man. I apologize. Is that better?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a poor American can have a quality of life that other people cannot enjoy, and yet we'll still say we won't look at that as capitalism afforded them that lifestyle. I think we got to look at that like a poor American can have 2 or 3 cars. They can have a comfortable lifestyle, central air. You have a higher quality of life in a capitalistic society. And let's be honest, one of the dirty little secrets about communism is if you just go back historically and look at how Mao Zedong treated his people when he first got into power, he starved to death 5 million of his own people. People in government can treat you evil. They can do certain things to you. Corruption in government is well documented. And so it's not like capitalism. I mean, communism has been just everybody gets a free fair share. It doesn't work like that. It always works where a certain group that is within government picks winners and losers, and everybody else suffers. Everybody else suffers and doesn't have a quality lifestyle. And so I think capitalism is the best system. And as far as that brother, when he was talking about that work share thing, Time Magazine has an article. They're calling it the global reset. That's what the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank wants to push, is a global reset of capitalism. They use COVID as an example as to why they're saying COVID is a way they want to use to try to reset the capitalistic system, not trying to, get into politics, but that's part of the reason Trump is an outsider. They don't want you to have a strong opportunity to be able to create your own. They want to shut it down and reset it. And so I think at this point in time, as an American citizen, I think we should take advantage of the opportunities in America as well as abroad. We don't have to just pick one over the other, and, get out there and start really not invading, but investing in other communities in other areas in the world. I think that's something that
the proper word is competing. The proper word is competing. You just got to get out there and compete. See, the thing is, you're right. See, the beauty of being Black American is that you're American, but you're still African, which means you can have a legacy here in America and a legacy in Africa. And that's all I'm advocating, because other groups are saying, someone from China is saying, let me have a legacy in Africa. And it's not necessarily the case with the Africans of America. They're not necessarily saying, you know what, let me get into the capitalist game in Africa and let me compete over there.
I mean, we see this with the Chinese, and the Chinese are very purposeful with what they do. They're coming, and I'm gonna say this right here. I think it's a danger in them coming to America. Coming to Africa, because they're probably, when they get the numbers, they're not gonna leave, and they're gonna have to be reckoned with. They're not.
How do we stop that? How do we stop that?
Well,
because you know what?
There's two ways. You can either compete. You could compete, but so
imagine if we had the same amount of Black Americans competing, and Black Americans deciding, you know what, I'm not leaving Africa. I'm comfortable here. That wouldn't be a problem. So shouldn't we have more of that as opposed to Chinese coming in?
Well, let me say this: if the Chinese government, if the CCP decides to send military forces over there, they're going to have to be dealt with militarily. And China have no problem right now trying to flex their muscles, and they're doing certain things in Hong Kong. They've shown they don't have character. They don't care.
The Chinese military is rather weak. They've suffered a lot of defeats. They have a lot of men, but they're not necessarily the military power that, for example, even if they have the number one economy, America is still going to be the number one military. But the thing is this, right? At the end of the day, like you said, capitalism is about competing. Whoever competes wins. Now, when you win, lock it in, lock the victory in, make sure that everybody who comes after you looks like you. That's part of the game too. And so now the game is about competing, and we have a chance to compete. We have a whole continent by which to compete.
I agree. I think it bothers me and it burns me up when I hear a lot of brothers talking against not being able to compete. In fact, I think it's just downright cowardly, to be completely honest with you. I think it's either because it's like, okay, we've been relegated to the bottom in America, and this is where we are going to go. Then we come with these, conjectures and make-believe situations where, well, we need to reset. I'm like, well, how is that going to get done? You're going to have power and wealth, which is what you've been trying to espouse. You're still going to need to control something. You cannot, nobody's just going to, you just hope, unless some white man makes the decision. And if he does,
nobody's going to give you power. Power is never given, power is taken. And so that's the thing. There's a perfect opportunity to now embrace capitalism and say, you know what? Let me be a capitalist. Let me understand how the game is played, rather than saying, you know what, I don't want to play the game. I want to run from it and live in a daydream. Instead of saying, you know what, let me embrace the game and play it how it's supposed to be played.
But if we're serious about capitalism, then I would push for, in the 21st century, learning math and science and making that really something we force ourselves to really go after and run after, because that's who's going to run the next 100 years, is if you dominate math and science, because that is, STEM science, coding, understand computers, technology is the way to go. And so I think
at this point, you shouldn't be going to college if you're not getting a STEM degree.
Yeah.
Learn a trade, a skill. If you're not getting a STEM degree, don't go to college.
True. I mean, unless you're gonna be a doctor, that's a plastic surgeon or something.
Well, the thing is, that's a STEM degree: science, technology, engineering, math,
but
medicine.
Yeah, you could count it that way.
Yeah,
but that's what I'm saying. I run an academy. That's what I try to tell people. Look, man, this is who is going to make in fact, look at Silicon Valley. It was white owned, started by whites. What did the Indians and Asians do? They more so focused on technology more than the white man did. And now they're complaining because it's over 50% of the people in Silicon Valley are not even born there. In fact, if you go out, you look at the whole H-1B visa thing, they're complaining about that because they're trying to put Americans in there because it's nothing but Asians.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And so at the end of the day, we need to embrace capitalism and start competing. It's just
that's it, brother. Hey, I got to go help my students, man. Y'all have a good one. I keep spitting that high five, brother.
All right, brother. For sure. Peace. All right, let's see here. Sundata, you guys one question that I got to get Brandon on. Go ahead, Sundata.
Hey, how's it going, y'all?
How you doing, brother?
So I think I like where the conversation is going about embracing capitalism, but I think it's more so we need to embrace certain capitalistic modes of production, but at the same time, we can't get too caught in it. One, because the way it works is you end up extracting so much value that you just might destroy your entire environment, or you might destroy like your social relations. So let's look at Malaysia, for example, right? Part of the reason they industrialized was because of like palm oil. But in doing that, they also caused like an ecological crisis. So I think, there's a fine balance. And I think that in terms of capitalism, we shouldn't just let a couple of people own and control all the resources, even if they are African.
Sundiata, and that's an amazing name. I like that. It was a Mali emperor, right? Sundiata was a Mali empire,
right? Yeah, first king.
Yeah, emperor. Yeah, and the thing is this: like I said, let's get our language correct. Nobody lets anybody do anything, right? In capitalism, you take it, you compete, you win. So let's talk about it in terms of winners. You're saying, well, the winners have done this, the winners have done that, the winners have done this. Well, if you have better intentions, why don't you win and take control and do what needs to be done? Rather than complaining that, hey, this person that won the game did this. It's like, that's cool and all that, but at the end of the day, you're a man. But at the end of the day, a man's responsibility on this planet is to win. Because, for example, you know who judges winners and losers? It's the women of the group. And if the women of the group are like, yeah, that's cool, your excuses are all right, but I'm going to go over with the winners. That's why it's like, yeah, excuses are cool, but you can't bring that to anybody but yourself and in the mirror. You got to eventually say, you know what, that's cool, the winners did this, but you know what, I'm going to win and do this over here. So yeah, it's cool. Yeah, somebody won the economic game and they did this. Well, okay, but why don't you win and remove them and do better? Because you clearly see a flaw in their game. And this is what we got to focus on. We got to stop being people who merely spectate, complain, and analyze the game, and then complain when the Chinese or the Lebanese do this, and we haven't thrown our hat into the ring. So yeah, you can say, well, somebody won the economic game, and they did this, and they did that, and you can complain all day. That's great. But at the end of the day, what are you doing to dislodge them from their position? If you're not doing anything, you're just somebody that's merely complaining, and you look powerless. If you're powerless, that's between you and yourself. Brothers like me are saying, you know what? I'm taking power. I'm going to win out here. And everybody who's going to win, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to explain is that I hear what you're saying, and I'm not complaining. What I'm saying is that the way the system is organized, to me, it's a transition, right? So capitalism is not going to be on this planet forever. Nothing lasts forever. So, 200 years from now, we could have an entirely different economic
system. All right,
system.
so are you going to be alive in 200 years? Like, see, we have to keep it focused.
Wait. But what I'm trying to say is just like,
so when your great-grandchildren are around, they will compete in whatever system. It's about competing in the current global system. When your great-grandchildren are around,
I agree with that.
I'm sure they'll compete in that system. But the thing is this, you and me are now here in this system, and we got to compete because the system is getting played over our heads, whether or not we like it. So yeah, sure, 200, 300 years from now, this is going to happen. But what about in the next 5 hours? What are you doing now? Because you're going to be put in a
box. Explain that.
So it's all about what you've done right now. Right now, are you winning in the game of capitalism? because we have to stay on topic. Like we can go all the way out there, but we have to stay on topic for this particular episode.
Okay, so here's my question to you, right? So you know that Nigeria is struggling with steel production, right?
Yes, sir. And we need to have a Ajaokuta steel up and running.
Right, but you also know that historically we've produced the best metal amongst all civilizations. So currently in Nigeria, if you look at the so-called traditional furnaces, like in the Southwest or the Igbo areas, so when they've done the analysis of the blast furnace versus the traditional African furnace, they found that the African furnace produces better steel, right? But the thing about what happened with that whole steel and iron production was that the Europeans, the Europeans, they dumped so much cheap and bad iron and steel in Africa over the past 200 years, they ended up destroying our local industries. So I think, in the sense of capitalism, we need to have, we need to have government protections in terms of our own industries, right? We can't let BP keep, extracting oil and, we just give the money to the government. They don't distribute the money the right way. So I agree with you in the sense that it's really about what are we going to do. But I also think that capitalism doesn't necessarily develop an economy. I would say it's more so.
So what develops an economy?
Engineering, science, mathematics, technology.
So in what type of economic system do those things develop an economy?
You said in what type of economic system? Well, it depends on
no, it doesn't depend. It doesn't depend on anything.
It doesn't. No, it does because
let me explain to you. Let me just explain to you. See, now you have economic systems, right? There are certain economic systems that we've already spoke on. The two prevailing economic systems on this particular planet are capitalism and socialism. And most countries are a mix of the two. America is about maybe 40% socialist, 60% capitalist, right? Other nations might be 70% socialist, 30% capitalist, like China, for example. Those are the two prevailing systems on the planet. So now within the two prevailing systems on the planet, let's discuss within the realities of this planet. So now what I'm saying to you is just answer the question within the parameters of this planet.
So the two systems that develop science and technology are
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. So now listen, I asked you what develops an economy. You said science, technology, engineering, math. Yes. Now, within an economy, there's something called an economic system. What economic system are you running? Are you running a system and you remember, that every system is based on, currently in this planet, every country is a mix of capitalism and socialism. And so a lot of people don't understand what capitalism is. Capitalism is where the people run things. Socialism, extreme socialism, is where the government runs everything, right? So now, within those two systems, where the people versus the government, some things you want the government to run. For example, firefighters. You don't want your house to be on fire and you make a call and you say, hey, I need firefighters. And they say, okay. Cash app us $2,000 or send us this much money for us to send. How many firefighters do you want? 5, 6, 2, 1? You don't want your ability to pay for firefighters to determine whether or not your house gets saved or not. That's purely capitalist. And it's rare you see it. Listen,
I don't think so.
Well, listen, it's not what you think. It's not facts.
Because here's the thing. Firefighters don't produce anything.
Listen, stop.
Well, I mean,
it's not about.
I feel like that's very important.
So now, yeah. But
firefighters are government service, but they don't produce anything.
It's a government service based on the fact that they collected your tax dollars that you paid because everybody paid for it. See, let's just focus on what it is. You might want to argue, but you can't here because there's no argument. That's a socialist policy, and that's socialism. To have firefighters shut your house and didn't pay for it. I'm trying to explain.
Hold on, wait, because this is very important. This is very important. What do firefighters produce as opposed to someone who works in a factory that's producing palm oil, cocoa, steel? That is a completely different thing than a firefighter. A firefighter is a government service. That's like saying,
okay, why is that a government service? Why is that a government service? You're about to prove me right here, and you haven't even thought this through. But why is that a government service? Why are firefighters a government service?
because the government started
firefighters a government service? Just give me 2 or 3 words. Why are firefighters a government service?
Explain.
All right, I'll answer the question. You said you didn't know. So just keep quiet and let me speak. The reason firefighters are a government service is because we've socialized firefighters. We haven't privatized it. We said, you know what? If there's ever an accident, if there's ever a fire, everybody is going to pay this much money to ensure that we have a workable fire department within our city, our county, our state, whatever. That's socialized. It means everybody bears the cost, and at any given moment, you can reap the benefits of needing firefighters. So that's completely socialized. So the thing is, look, rather than to go there, my question to you is this, right? The topic is this. Within Africa, we need more capitalists because capitalism is controlling the means of production. And what we lack in Africa is people who are producing. You brought up a good point. You said, for example, that in the steel factory, I believe it's in Kogi State, it's just been there. And we've been buying steel from other people. When we have all of the raw material to create steel, and we have one of the most expensive steel factories in the world, rather than create that steel, we're buying steel from other people that are selling us nonsense steel.
And Ebube, if I can interject, in Oshogbo and Osun State, the Gote bought this huge steel factory and it's growing weeds everywhere. It's just sitting there.
Terrible.
But that's the thing with capitalism.
And that's the problem, is that rather than us take advantage of what we have on ground, rather than hiring hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of Nigerians to come in, work at steel factories, do the logistics, do the accounting, and create hundreds of thousands of jobs from a steel industry, we merely buy steel from another nation who's created hundreds of thousands of jobs from their steel industry in their country. And then we have people who come on and will say that that's okay, and that's not okay. That's not okay with me. We're letting other people play the capitalist game on Africa better than us. And we should be playing that game better than them. So yeah, it's like you can say capitalism is bad and all that stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you look at the results. The result is that in every transaction, we get the short end of the stick, and we need to stop getting the short end of the stick. And some brothers are not going to understand that. Some brothers are going to understand that. Some men and women out there are going to say, you know what, this brother's speaking truth. We need to control the means of production. Let me look into what I can control in regards to Africa when it comes to the means of production. And then some people are going to say, well, you know what, this, and that. And that's cool. Because at the end of the day, the children of the people who started the industries are going to hire the people who didn't start the industries. And they're going to be workers, while the other people are going to be owners. That's how this game goes. And that's why I'm saying right now, embrace capitalism so your children, because a good father leaves an inheritance and a legacy for their children.
Right.
So now embrace capitalism so you can be the one saying, my children own. My children will own this, and this, and they're tangible. Things you can list out and write down on a piece of paper. Versus someone saying, well, you know, there was this factory and it polluted this. Great. Stay out there with that. But when your children are looking to my children for a job, just understand that that's just the way it is. That's all I'm saying, brother. You pick which side you're going to be on. That's it.
I think it's a mix, though, because with the capitalist mode of production, with socialism, with all these systems, it's really about how is it benefiting us. The problem with a lot of the stuff going on in Africa is we have a lot of capitalism, but it's not benefiting us, right? So if you look at a lot of our resources, you go to Niger, Mali, they have a lot of uranium that's being taken by the guru.
And why is that? Let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
and for everybody who hasn't, before we go there, anybody who hasn't hit the like button, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button, show your engagement, show your enjoyment of the content. And anybody that hasn't subscribed to Up Close and Center, make sure you go and subscribe to Up Close and Center. Now, in addressing your question, if you've watched any of the documentaries I've produced, if you check out France and Africa, I talk clearly about why we need to stop what's going on in French West Africa, because what's happening is they're being denied capitalism. They're being denied the opportunity to own and control the means of production. So everything you're saying is because they lack the ability to engage in capitalism. That's it. So to answer your question is yes, we need more capitalism in those countries because they're being denied that opportunity and that ability.
So to me, you literally described like a socialist communist system because you're talking about because you're talking about the everyday person, right? Owning the means of production.
I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm describing is the fact that capitalism is where people own and control the means of production. Now,
who are the
people?
Who are the people?
Listen, people like me and you, right? Now, I control I own where I work. I work for myself. I control where I work. I am my own boss. If I want to take 4 weeks off, the reason I can go to Africa for 3 to 4 months every year is because I control where I work. Period. And I'm getting ready to hire some people now to come and work for me. So I'm creating something for people to come and work for a very cool boss. Do you think they should get as much money as me? No, they didn't create the opportunity. I created it for them. So now, at the end of the day, we're going to have people who create opportunities for others and then people who take advantage of the opportunities created by others. That's it. You have to ask yourself, what side do you fall on? Are you somebody who's waiting for someone to create an opportunity for you? Sure, be that person. That's you. That's not me. Me, I'm a producer. I create opportunities for people. So now all I'm saying to you is this, is that we need more Africans, African Americans, Black people to embrace capitalism and start winning in this game because that's the game we're playing. You can come with all your excuses and all your anecdotal evidence as to why capitalism is bad. That's great for you. But when your children end up working for my children, they'll say, Dad, why is it that Ebube Okoli's children are our bosses? And you can tell them, well, it's because I didn't really play the game. I just worked for somebody my whole life. And then that's it. That's all I gave you is that I work for somebody and I hope to retire comfortably. And this is the legacy I gave you. So that's all I'm telling you now is, so yeah, your excuses are good, but at the end of the day, they're just excuses. Either you're a boss or you're not. And if you're not a boss, then maybe you should take time and say, can I even play the game? If you can't play the game, then don't play it. Stay back and watch the rest of us play. That's it.
Okay, so I'll just kind of end it with this. The main problem with capitalism is it removed our ability to produce for ourselves in a very localized fashion. So I'm talking about food, clothing, materials for agriculture, iron. You talk about all these things that was taken away from people in a very decentralized manner, and it was put into very centralized places where a few people own and control those production things. So the main problem is that we have to make sure that a few people don't just control everything in Africa, because all it's going to do is just produce the same chaos we have now. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I thought that was a great build. Ebube, I'm gonna send you an email because we need to talk more.
Shoot me an email, man. I'd love to talk to you. And that's a powerful name you got there.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for joining. All right, Brandon, you're the last caller.
Man, look. First of all, you didn't put me through torture listening to that dude. That was ridiculous. But Okoli, 100% correct. I agree with you. What's funny is just yesterday, we had a person on talking about how Africa basically needs to let the Chinese come in, build factories, and pay our people $1 a day, and how somehow that was going to lift us to economic prominence in the globe. Now, Lou Major said that, and there were people in the comments who were agreeing with him. And my argument was the same as yours. Why can't you start a factory? Why can't you compete? And I like to listen to Les Brown. And Les Brown says one thing: you must be willing to do the things today that others will not do in order to have the things tomorrow that others will not have. Our people, and there's a lot of people in Africa too, and I'm not beating up on Africans, but it really scares me to believe and see that there are Africans who believe that they need another race to come in and basically enslave their people in factories when they could create these factories themselves. One thing I know about life is this: no matter what job you work, Okoli, no matter how many degrees you got, if you get hired, what will they do? The first thing they're going to do is train you. That's period. It don't matter if you work at Jack in the Box. It don't matter if you work for freaking Saks Fifth Avenue. They're going to train you. When the Chinese come in and pay your people $1 a day, the first thing they're going to have to do is train your people to work in their factory, right? So even having the knowledge of how to do something is not really necessary, because you can always pay people to train you on how to do something or train your workforce. We don't understand how economies work. Economies do not get healthy and stable based on having a bunch of cash or money, right? Economies are stable when the means of production are owned by the people and the wealth of the economy stays within the economy. The problem with the Chinese model is that when the Chinese come build a factory for you, Lou Major, the money leaves, the wealth leaves your economy to go back to China so they can pay their government, who probably gave them a loan or something, to get over there and build the factory. It's not about having more money. United States is not wealthy because we print money. Like, United States prints money. But if we print too much money, we have hyperinflation and stuff, and then it corrupts your economy. If a butcher cuts meat and the butcher's knife gets dull, he needs somebody to sharpen the knife. He sends his knife to the guy who sharpens knives. Then the guy who sharpens knives needs a new stone or a new metal thing to sharpen knives. He needs to go to the guy who creates the iron ore to get a new sharpening block. That has nothing to do with the $100 that the butcher gave the knife sharpener to sharpen the knives. The same $100 goes around in a rotation and eventually makes it back to the butcher. That's called a stable, strong economy. What we do is we give the money to the Chinese dude. Even in America, we get the money from our job. We go to the Chinese dude who owns a business in our community, give it to him. Immediately, the dollar leaves the community. That's why Black communities are poor. They have no economy because every penny we get leaves our economy within a few minutes. So like you say, we need to keep the means of production within the economy, owned by the people who are in the economy, and we need to make sure that the dollars that are generated from the means of production stays in the economy. If Dangote is opening an oil refinery, you need to be making sure that every pair of boots that those workers wear in that oil refinery is produced within Nigeria. And they're all buying those boots. You need to make sure those hard hats are produced in Nigeria, and everybody wearing those hard hats is working at that refinery, keeping the money within the economy. So I just wanted to say, I thank you so much I thank you so much for what you did, because our people don't even realize that we're preaching a message of self-destruction. And I've always said this, I don't think Black people fear failure or the police or anything like that. I think Black people fear success, because if you're successful, that means you have to be accountable. And we do not like being accountable for our own lives. That's why you have these grown men on here talking about, I want to have capitalism, but not too much capitalism. So what that means is we should be successful, but not too successful. The countries who control your existence, the United States and China, the group that every African person is trying to justify being in Africa, they operate off of one thing, capitalistic mindset. You might believe China's socialist, but they have a large amount of capitalism going on in that country, and they control what you do. The only way you're going to be able to get from under their yoke is to have a capitalistic system of your own. And the last point I'll make is this. The last point I'll make is this. Black people talk about capitalism. Capitalism's bad. Capitalism is capitalism bad. Have you ever seen the show Shark Tank?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Shark Tank is basically where people push ideas or whatever, and then people come, the millionaires lined up at the table, offer to buy those businesses or those ideas, right? LeBron James makes millions of dollars. He could easily go on Shark Tank because they are pretty much offering people pennies on the dollar for their ideas, right or wrong.
Oh, partnership.
Yeah. They're like, we'll give you $5 million for this idea. And most people who are smart are like, hell no, my idea is worth way more than $5 million. So they pass. LeBron James has $5 million a billion times over. Does he go do Shark Tank and practice capitalism and try to buy out businesses that will be successful, nurture them until they become billion-dollar businesses and then sell them like the guys on Shark Tank who are billionaires? No.
Hey, but Brandon, I'm gonna stop you there. Hey, Brandon, I'm gonna stop you there. And here's why. It's because LeBron James is a brand. He's not a person anymore. He's a brand. meaning that if LeBron James does something, it affects his brand. That's his only problem. And what I'm saying is that I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, for these athletes and for example, you look at LeBron, right? Yeah, he's rich, but brother, he's not rich for real, because he doesn't make his money independently. Like for example, someone that makes his money independently by doing something where they merely rely on the people within their community and they've made millions off of their community. When you work for an organization like the NBA that are owned by people who don't look like us, and you have a bunch of endorsements by people who don't look like us, it's like, yeah, you're free, but you're not really free. You're just a high-priced employee because you don't own where you work.
So what I'm saying is this. LeBron James doesn't practice capitalism really in any way. And he could go buy companies and start companies if he wanted to. But
I gotta interject, Brandon. Well, you know him and his what's his partner's name? Rich Paul. They've started several companies, especially in entertainment.
But what I'm saying is they're not starting like true capitalism. Look, this person's coming up with an idea and it's already successful. Let me just buy them out. And that turns into a corporation. This is how corporations and stuff start. This is how Uber and all that stuff starts. Some guy develops the idea, someone buys them out, and then they build it up into a corporation. But the point I'm trying to make is this. I do the same thing like you, Okoli. I went to Kenya. I saw issues. I saw things. I didn't like Chinese people owning up all the places to stay. I got into the market to compete. We don't want to compete. Black people in Africa and Black people in America are doing the same thing. We're looking for a damn job instead of working on being the owners of the means of production. And you are totally right. Africa is the #1 capitalistic place on the planet because everywhere you go, somebody is selling something. So everyone is selling something. Doritos can't even get their money up out of Africa. Frito-Lay can't even get their money out of Africa without that dude on the side of the road selling chips that he done fried at home getting a piece. You feel me? Yeah. That's what we got to start doing. That's what we got to start doing. But most of these people, they've been trained along the Western ideology. Capitalism is not hurting Africa. Capitalism is not hurting Black people. What's hurting Black people is this idea that if we go to school, get an education, some white guy is going to give us a job, and that paycheck's going to, what I call a poverty check. That poverty check's going to keep on coming every Friday, keeping you locked in to a job you hate until you drop dead. So you were 100% on point. I suggest everybody go learn the basic function of an economy first. And I don't even think Lou Major understood that when he was talking about letting the Chinese come and enslave his own people for pennies on the dollar, right? And there were people agreeing with him on that. And so go learn how the economy works, and then maybe you will understand. You are going to have to compete. You are going to have to put your hat in the ring. This economy is like double dutch. If you don't never jump in, you ain't double dutch.
Oh shit, man! We can't make this a 3-hour stream. Lou Major in the chat room. Oh man, I can't make this.
Lou Major is on here. Hey, Lou, look, I'm about to get off. Lou Major was absolutely wrong, and my boy Okoli will agree. You do not let another country come in and enslave your people. You didn't see them during the Industrial Revolution of the United States. You did not see them letting Chinese or any other race come in and enslave them. They enslaved each other. Like they were like, no, these white dudes gonna work in this white guy's factory, making pennies on the dollar. Immigrants came in who were also white, and they worked them. But the white man will not let you come in and enslave his population, no matter how much you think it's going to build your economy, because he knows what we fail to realize. You will never get rich working for somebody else. That's one thing which is true. You will never get rich working for somebody else. So why does a guy who's very intelligent like Lou Major think by letting the Chinese open a factory that we can open, we're going to empower Africa? The Chinese don't create anything. The Chinese imitate everything. That's why you can get a knockoff pair of shoes, a knockoff this, knockoff that, knockoff this. What have Chinese people invented in the past 50 years? Nothing. But they sure have replicated a lot. So why can't we replicate stuff? We can make fake Nike.
Hey, Brandon, the Chinese invented a process to copy everything, and they've ran with that for the last 60 years.
So why can't we copy it? Imitation is the highest form of
flattery. And you know what, Brandon? In defense of Lou Major, I will say that. In defense of Lou Major, he was basically saying this, right? It all goes back to capitalism. owning the means of production. So now, if Africans aren't ready to own the means of production, and African Americans aren't ready to step in and say, wait a minute, my African brothers aren't owning the means of production, then if someone comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to bring the means of production to you guys, you can't fault them for doing that. And now if they do that, what you need to do as Africans is say, you know what, let's copy what these guys are doing. Let's set up, they brought in a factory doing this, let's copy and make our own factories. Because at the end of the day, I think Lou Major was basically saying there's a failure on the African continent, and there's a failure within Black America to take advantage of the lapses within the African continent. So if someone comes in to industrialize the place, how can we be mad at them? If anything, we need to copy what they're doing.
Oh, and him saying that's 100% right. But what I was trying to get to stand is, don't look at that as a solution. Look at that as is like a last resort. What we should be doing is trying to rally people to generate the capital to build stuff. Like we give our money to everything else. Why not give $5? Hey. And this was my issue with Phil on the Diaspora channel. Why don't you 1.4 million subscribers? You get $5 from everybody and start a factory, right? And most people would donate to that. I would. So Umar Johnson raised $1 million just on internet, just talking crap and saying, give me money. We need to do that, and then we get the capital. But it's really everybody just wants to line their own pockets, and they want to be individually rich. Whereas the Chinese are like, I'm trying to make our whole society eat. We're more like, let's do socialism. Okay. But when people get their paycheck, they forget about socialism.
I have been, listen, the lion has been summoned, and so the lion will defend what he says, because I think that there is clearly a very clear.
Shout out to Lou Major.
I'm about to get off, Lou. You got it. Just rip me a new one.
I'm not going to read a new one, man. Because here's the deal. Brother Brandon, what you don't even realize is that all this stuff you're saying, you're actually agreeing with me without realizing it. So here's what I was saying to people. That this concept of, we don't want to go to Africa and pay these people slave wages, and how that's morally apprehensible and then it's wrong. And I said, no. Africa doesn't need moral relativism and charity and just this people coming in with this big altruistic heart. Africa needs hardcore capitalism, because if we use hardcore capitalism in Africa, we can own the means of production. We could take Africa from a raw resource producer to a manufacturer of finished products, and we could leverage Africa's natural competitive advantages. Here, Africa is the only place in the world. Actually, that's a lie. Africa and Latin America, but not quite as much as Africa. Africa is the only place on the planet right now that can become an industrialized economy that is fully vertically integrated, meaning that it has all of the natural resources, the cheap young labor force, and is able to go ahead and turn those raw resources into finished products, meaning the cost of all finished goods across the world, if Africa gets its shit right, will be cheaper. However, what will happen is that the Western societies, and to a lesser extent Asian societies that currently benefit from Africa's poverty, their standard of living will substantially decrease. For that reason, the role that's been carved up for Africa on the world stage by the developed economies, as we call them, developed economies, is to maintain Africa as a raw natural resource producer, and that's it. Never allow it to go into manufacturing. And I said what the Chinese were doing, and if we play it right, can use the Chinese for it, was because China needs to maintain its manufacturing powerhouse status to continue to grow its economy, and China has overcapacity of infrastructure building. We could actually ride China to help us industrialize. Because as they bring their factories to Africa, guess what? If we negotiate the deal right, we could say, hey, you could bring your factories here. We would love it. Bring your factories. We'll even give you 100% ownership. However, the second in command must be a Nigerian.
Exactly.
That means you could bring in your people, but you got to train our people too. You could build all the railroads you want. We'll even make an ownership deal with you. No problem. You could own it for 50 years. We don't care. But you got to teach us how to build our own. So we could ride the Chinese to our own industrialization. And some countries, and I'll even give the Nigerians credit for this, because the Nigerian government doesn't do many things right, But these dumb fucks did this right, which was they were negotiating deals like that. Them, Rwanda, Tanzania were one of the few countries that were actually, they were playing the system right. Kagame was playing it well. Magufuli was playing it well. And the Nigerians, they were playing it better than everybody else. Once that industrialization started and they saw that Africa had a chance of real industrialization, that's when this propaganda campaign came in of recolonization, debt trap diplomacy, and then just like the dumb fucks we always are, well, we got to get the Chinese out of Africa. No, we don't. We need that Chinese money. We need the Chinese coming to Africa. We need them taking all that excess capacity in building our bridges, building our roads, building our hospitals, building our schools. As long as in the process of them doing so, we have enough common sense to have them teach us how to do it. So that after we have them do the initial industrialization, we can maintain and continue to industrialize on our own. Because one thing that Africa has is a knowledge gap. Now, here's the thing. This is after saying all of this. The only reason that the Chinese are able to do this and that we would need to have to accept the Chinese doing this is because we're not doing it. Black Americans, black diasporans are not taking fucking responsibility and not seizing their own opportunities. And look, if you're not going to seize an opportunity to grow your own wealth, I promise you that somebody else will come and grow that wealth for you. It just won't go in your pocket. So while you sit here and debate whether or not you should be going to Africa, everybody else is going to Africa because it's the last place to find your fortune. So, Brandon, the reason I'm saying that your rhetoric is dangerous, even though I know that it's coming from a good place, is because you don't know what you're talking about. You give incorrect information to people, which will cause people to not understand the opportunity that they have. I think a lot of Black Americans understand that there's opportunity in Africa, but I doubt that most of them understand how that opportunity works. They probably couldn't tell you why it's an opportunity. They don't understand the value of that opportunity. You've got 40,000 Black farmers in the United States. Africa's got 1.3 billion people and imports 50% of its food. Yet it's got the most fertile land in the planet. Sounds like an opportunity to me. So you could be one of those 40,000 Black farmers struggling in America and getting fucked out of your land, or you could take your talents to Africa and own a 4,000 or 5,000 acre farm and feed the fastest growing market in the world. You know what the Chinese figured out? They figured that out. So you know what they're doing? They've got their farmers out there. Why don't we have our farmers out there?
Exactly.
You know where the biggest construction boom on the planet is happening right now? You guessed it, Africa. You know what they don't have enough of? Plumbers. They don't have enough plumbers, electricians, carpenters, so that for them to be able to fully maximize their construction boom. You know what that sounds like to me? An opportunity. But if you're sitting around not taking that opportunity, then the Chinese will take that opportunity. They'll end up getting rich, and you'll be just like always holding your dick and complaining about where the position in life you're in. See, here's the thing. Ebube is a lawyer. He's got to be nice. I'm not a lawyer. He's been telling you guys are some dumb fucks for a long time. He's just too nice to flat out say it. So Ebube, I'll speak. I'll go ahead and translate it. Quit being a dummy and get your ass to Africa and go make some money and stop complaining about your fucking life. It's sad. It's honestly sad.
Lou Major.
That's all I got.
All right, Lou Major. Appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it, man. Thank you, Lou
Major. Shout out to Lou Major, man.
Hey, Ebube, you know you agree with me, though. You know that you agree with me.
Lou, the thing is this, right? For some reason, you've read enough books, you've gained enough knowledge that, like, when you talk, I just listen, because at that point, I can learn something. You know, you got a lot of knowledge, man. Much respect for that. Much respect. Much
I
respect.
have a lot of knowledge in what I do. I don't have a lot of knowledge in a lot of things. And Ebube, I need to learn from you. I need you to teach me, okay, how to tell a person to go fuck themselves in such a way that they look forward to the trip. I've only met 2 people like that. One's a young woman whose name is Susan. That woman could tell you to go fuck yourself, and you'll look forward to the trip. And the only other person I've met that's like that is you, Ebube. You could tell a person, go fuck yourself. They're not going to look forward to the trip. They'll ask you if you'd like to come along. I need you to teach me how to do that, Ebube. How the fuck do you do that?
So it's gonna be even. You teach me how I can do you. I teach you how to do me.
Okay, but you got to tell me real quick though. How do you do that?
All right, well, here's the thing, right? Like somebody like you, right? You know what you're talking about, right? When you know what you're talking about, it's like this. At the end of the day, it's like, look, I'm telling you something good, and it's gonna benefit you. Now, if you don't listen, that's your business. You chose that path. So at the end of the day, you just got to be secure in your knowledge.
All right, cool. Lou Major, anything else you'd like to share in closing? Lou Major, before we close out.
Hey, man. No problem, man. Hey, Ebube, man, we love you, brother. We got to learn more from you. We got to definitely vibe more, man. When are you coming back to Africa?
You said?
When are you coming back to Africa, man? Let's get drunk.
Let's do it. I should be in Nigeria between March and April. One of my friends is getting married.
When are you coming back to Africa? Let's go get drunk.
All right, so here's the thing. I'm working on a position in government pretty soon, 2021. You know, if everything works out, I will be back on the African continent. But even before then, my friend is getting married in March in Abuja. If you're gonna be in Abuja, let's link up. Let's make it happen.
Let's get drunk. Hey, listen, if you're gonna be in government, let's go ahead and get really shit-faced so you could do something stupid before you become a government person, because once you become government, you got to be all Sadiddy and shit.
Not in Nigeria.
You know how it goes. You know how it goes.
Not in Nigeria.
All right. Take care, brother.
All right, brother. You take care.
Appreciate it. All right, Ebube, go ahead. Final words. Floor is yours.
All right. So, it's been a great show. You know, Brandon showed up. Lou Major showed up. 2 of the heavyweights showed up. Those guys are great. And everybody who hasn't gone to Up Close and Center, make sure you go to Up Close and Center. And also make sure, too, that you click that like button, show your engagement, show that you enjoy the content. Click that like button. The like button needs to be clicked. And also, too, make sure you go to Up Close and Center and click that subscribe button. And also click that notification bell so you'll know when new content is released. And at the end of the day, when it comes to capitalism, we got to play the game. There's a lot of positions that need to be filled in Africa. African Americans, Africans, we all need to fill those positions and take advantage before somebody else does, because when other people do, we complain. So let's take advantage of it before anyone else can. And this generation, let's be the next millionaires and billionaires.
There we go. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Like, share, and subscribe. Go to DynastymIr.com. Until next time, family, Dynasty Mir, search for Uru. Peace.